Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Mengqi Ji. In 2012, Mengqi Ji, a Chinese citizen, enrolled at the University of Missouri, Columbia, USA, where she earned a master's degree in mechanical and aerospace engineering. One of her professors was impressed by her expertise and offered her a job at biomaterials company. While working there, Mengqi met her future husband, Joe Elledge, in September 2015, as he was pursuing his engineering studies. They both worked at the same company, where Mengqi was Joe's boss. Their feelings for each other grew quickly, and just a year and 7 months after their first meeting, Joe proposed to Mengqi on September 22, 2017, on a trail at Rock Bridge Memorial State Park, called the Devil's Refrigerator. They got married only 2 weeks later. Mengqi's parents think they rushed into marriage due to the impending expiration of Mengqi's visa. They felt that American citizens couldn't fully grasp the difficulty that immigrants face. Although Mengqi is financially independent, but she still has difficulty obtaining citizenship. After nearly 5 months, Mengqi received a promotion at work. Soon after, she discovered she was pregnant. Mengqi and Joe decided that she should decline the promotion and leave her job to focus entirely on motherhood, even though she was the primary breadwinner for their family at that time. Their income decreased significantly, but it was sufficient for their essential needs. In October 2018, Joe and Mengqi's family gave birth to their first daughter. However, after her birth, Mengqi and Joe began to face difficulties. Although their marriage appeared normal to outsiders, only Mengqi's parents were aware of the reality. After quitting her job, Mengqi felt completely isolated. She doesn't communicate with anyone. Her small child became her only companion, along with daily phone calls from her mother. Traditionally, Mengqi's parents had to travel from China to the United States before she gave birth, to help care for and support her. They lived in a separate house nearby and visited Mengqi daily, but their appearance increased tension between Mengqi and her husband, Joe. On October 9, 2019, a year after Mengqi's daughter was born, Mengqi's parents were alarmed when they didn't receive a call from her. Unable to reach her, they sent a family friend who lived close by to check on Mengqi. When the friend arrived, Joe answered the door and revealed that Mengqi was missing. He shared a troubling account. On the evening of October 8, he had tried to give Mengqi a massage and flirt with her, but she rejected him, saying she needed sleep because she had important plans for the next day. Joe stated that he woke up the next morning to find Mengqi gone. She had left behind her car keys, mobile phone, wallet, and, most importantly, did not take their daughter with her. Despite her absence, Joe did not immediately report her missing, believing she was simply out for a walk and would return. A family friend attempted to call Mengqi but was unsuccessful. Eventually, under pressure, Joe reported her disappearance to the police, but rather than calling 911, he reached out to the non-emergency number 311. Mengqi's parents were unaware of this and were convinced the police were actively searching for their daughter. On October 15, 2019, a week after Mengqi went missing, her husband, Joe Elledge, reported her disappearance to the Columbia, Missouri Police Department. He recounted to detectives the same information he had shared with a family friend. Joe described Mengqi as appearing stressed the night before she went missing. He mentioned that she went to bed after telling him she had important matters to attend to the next morning. When he asked her 3 times who she was meeting, she did not provide clear answers. He suspected she might be having an affair and secretly meeting another man. Later that day, Joe informed investigators that he had discovered notes on Mengqi's computer discussing an affair. Joe said Mengqi texted a man from China. The message ended with her expressing sadness that her husband was not interested in her. Joe speculated that Mengqi might have left him for this man, potentially abandoning their daughter for a new life. He expressed his love for their daughter and his desire for Mengqi to return home safely. From the outset, investigators were skeptical of Zhou's account and considered him a suspect. Zhou's family hired a lawyer, who revealed that Mengqi and the man China with had intimate and emotional conversations via text messages. The main question is whether Mengqi went to see the man who lives in China, and where she is now. The police found out that Zhou, upon realizing his wife was missing, did not call 911, but instead contacted 311. This made them even more suspicious of him. He willingly returned to the Columbia Police Department for further questioning. Investigators grew increasingly suspicious of his account, particularly when Zhou mentioned taking long drives to find new walking spots instead of searching for his missing wife. Additionally, it was noted that Zhou closed the door before leaving their apartment. It seemed like Zhou didn't care how Mengqi got home, especially since her phone keys were left behind. Mengqi didn't drive the car. Detectives had suspicions, but they found no evidence to prove Zhou was involved in his wife's disappearance, no blood, weapons, witnesses, or body. Furthermore, there was no indication that Mengqi ran away to meet another man in China. They also confirmed that Mengqi had not booked any flights. From the start, it was clear that Mengqi would never have abandoned her beloved daughter. Mengqi's parents refused to accept this hypothesis and insisted that she was a loving mother. When detectives spoke with Zhou, they asked for his phone number, which he willingly provided. Inside his phone, investigators discovered something alarming: over 10 hours of secretly recorded conversations with his wife, in which Zhou expressed his dissatisfaction with their marriage and his desire for a divorce. He also discussed plans to send his wife back to China. However, this discovery was minor compared to the nearly 4.5 hours of recordings found on Mengqi's phone. In these conversations, the true nature of Zhou emerged. He threatened his wife, referred to himself as God, and demanded that her parents stay away from their home. It was chilling. The Zhou family's issues started a few weeks before Mengqi gave birth. Her parents traveled from China to support their daughter, following a tradition where grandparents help with the baby for 100 days. This custom bothered Zhou immensely, as he had a strong dislike for Mengqi's parents. What really angered Zhou was that Mengqi tried to fight him back, and she said that she needed her parents. She loved them very much and needed their help taking care of the newborn. When Mengqi had just given birth, the relationship between her and her husband became very tense, and they argued a lot. Mengqi's mother mentioned that Zhou disliked it when Mengqi spoke Chinese around him because he barely understood the language. Zhou interpreted everything they said as hurtful and negative towards him. Eventually, when Mengqi's father could no longer tolerate the situation and returned to China, Zhou felt relieved and seeing it as his personal victory. Now, he only had to manage his mother-in-law and reassert his authority in the home. Mengqi's mother made Chinese dumplings for Zhou's birthday, but he didn't like the way she used the cutting board. This sparked a heated argument between Zhou and her. Zhou angrily demanded that she leave his house for good. Mengqi's mother, who believed in maintaining harmony because of her Confucian values, chose not to confront Zhou and did not defend herself against his harsh words. Mengqi pleaded with Zhou to allow her mother to stay because she needed her mother's support, but Zhou only replied with insults and foul language. Zhou told Mengqi was incompetent solely because she was a woman. Zhou attempted to manipulate and control her. He even threatened Mengqi's mother, claiming he would harm her. This left Mengqi's mother in shock. She didn't understand why Zhou was so angry with both her and Mengqi. Feeling helpless, Mengqi sought help from Zhou's mother, who quickly lost her temper and drove 2 hours to address the family conflict. However, even with his mother present, Zhou couldn't hide his disdain for his mother-in-law. He demanded that she kneel and bow to him. Although Zhou eventually apologized to her, he still insisted that she leave before the 100-day mark. Consequently, Mengqi's mother returned to China. In October 2019, Mengqi disappeared. Detectives believed that serious family conflicts made her feel trapped, especially regarding her immigration status. Just 5 months prior, she had to attend another interview to apply for citizenship. 2 weeks after Mengqi's disappearance, the Columbia Police Department opened a criminal investigation into the case. On the same day, 16 days after she went missing, police arrested Joe Elledge on suspicion of child abuse. Joe confessed to physically abusing his 1-year-old daughter, claiming it was a form of discipline. Before Mengqi went missing, she told her mother that she had seen bruises on her daughter and suspected Joe was the cause. Her mother advised her to report Joe to the police, but Mengqi never had the opportunity to do so. Joe's lawyer claimed this was merely an attempt to get Joe imprisoned. He argued that Joe made a mistake, emphasizing that he is a young single father who might have erred. Joe was released on bail, while his mother assisted him and cared for her granddaughter. Meanwhile, detectives continued to gather evidence against Joe, convinced that he was involved in Mengqi's disappearance. On October 25, 2019, police obtained a search warrant and entered the apartment. Joe had been missing for just over 2 weeks. During the search, they collected Mengqi's backpack and notes that Joe had written to help himself prepare for questions from reporters and investigators. Detectives thoroughly searched the apartment for any evidence and, following a hunch, they also took a pair of dirty boots for examination, but they found nothing significant. On the same day, Joe Elledge was arrested on suspicion of child abuse after fresh bruises were discovered on the girl's body. Meanwhile, the search for Mengqi has become a search for her remains, because no one believes she is still alive. Detectives carefully tracked all movements of Joe's car and phone. However, every lead they followed led to dead ends in this complex case. As a result, the detective made the decision to charge Joe Elledge with first-degree murder, even without a body. These charges were filed while Joe was still in jail on child abuse allegations. Meanwhile, detectives continued their efforts to locate Mengqi. Phone records indicated that Joe was away for 30 minutes on the day he reported her missing, a fact he did not share with investigators. When the detectives searched that location, they found nothing. After months of searching, the police were still unable to find Mengqi. Her mother traveled to the United States to help with the search, convinced that her daughter's body was nearby. Over the following months, the police conducted regular searches in the area, and Mengqi's mother held a memorial by the river. A year later, while Joe was still awaiting his trial, a tourist was walking in the park where Joe had proposed to Mengqi. He noticed something shiny in the mud and discovered it was a wallet. Upon closer inspection, he saw a pair of shoes and then what looked like a human skull. He immediately contacted the police. Upon investigation, it was confirmed that the remains were those of Mengqi. Her parents learned that their daughter had died, but the circumstances surrounding her death were still unclear. Much time had passed, and even forensic experts could not determine the cause of death. They found unnatural damage to her bones, including 4 broken ribs, indicating she had suffered a strong blow to the back. Detectives began to piece together a theory about what happened to Mengqi, focusing on the evidence collected after her disappearance. They noted that Joe's cell phone records indicated he was near the location where Mengqi was found on the day he reported her missing. On the day Mengqi disappeared, it had been raining. Key evidence included Joe's dirty boots. The dirt and gravel on the soles, along with foliage, were sent to the Missouri Botanical Garden for analysis. The lab carefully removed juniper tree needles from the boots for DNA testing. A lab worker then climbed nearby juniper trees, numbered each, and collected fresh needles from the highest branches. These samples were preserved and compared with the needles found on Joe's shoes, revealing a DNA match. On November 1, 2021, Joe Elledge's trial for the murder of his wife, Mengqi, began. with compelling evidence that Zhou was present at the scene where Mengqi's body was discovered on the day she went missing, including DNA from the trees and geolocation data. However, his lawyer presented a new narrative. The lawyer claimed that Zhou did kill his wife, but insisted it was a tragic accident. Due to evidence from the juniper tree and its DNA, Zhou could no longer assert that Mengqi had run away. He had to confess that he buried her in a shallow grave. Zhou stated that he was aware of his wife's communication with a man from China, and they had an argument that night. Feeling upset and hurt, he wanted to take their daughter for a walk. Mengqi rushed towards him, intending to take the child, but Zhou pushed her away. She fell against the table, injured her ribs, and lost consciousness. When she regained consciousness, she went to bed. In the morning, when the child started crying, Mengqi did not wake up. Zhou then realized she had passed away in her sleep. He claimed that his wife had attacked him first and that he was only defending himself, asserting it was self-defense. However, this explanation seemed highly questionable. Zhou was twice the size of his wife, making it unlikely that she could have attacked him, and after sustaining such a severe injury, she would not have been able to get up and walk to the bed. The prosecutor argued that the evidence, particularly the 4 broken ribs, suggested Zhou's account was fabricated. This injury indicated she had suffered a brutal beating. The prosecutor alleged that it was premeditated murder driven by months of escalating anger. Zhou harbored hatred for his wife. In court, the prosecutor presented secret audio recordings between the couple to reveal the true dynamics of their relationship. These recordings helped clarify the motive behind the crime. No evidence of Mengqi communicating with other men was ever found. On November 11, 2021, after nearly 7 hours of discussion, the jury reached a verdict. They found Zhou Elledge guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison. Mengqi and Zhou's daughter currently lives with Zhou's mother, but Mengqi's parents are pursuing joint custody of their 4-year-old granddaughter. Zhou's lawyer argues that while the child will always have a relationship with her Chinese grandparents, she should stay in the care of Zhou's mother for her safety. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Deborah Jeter. Deborah Jeter was born in 1976 in Georgia, USA. She was raised in a loving family and since childhood had a passion for helping people. When it came time to choose a career, Deborah decided to become a nurse without hesitation. She enrolled in a local college and pursued her nursing education. Alongside her studies, Deborah also focuses on building relationships. Deborah's boyfriend is a young man named Lester Jeter. They began a romantic relationship, and later both decided to move forward with married life. After marriage, they had 2 children. Their first child, named Kern, a year later, they had a second child. Because of their close age gap, the siblings were very close and did everything together. After graduating from college, Deborah to work part-time as an anatomy and physiology teacher. She also joined an exchange program as a licensed professional nurse. From an early age, Deborah's daughters began experiencing problems. Deborah often shows aggression towards her children and sometimes she has no control over her behavior. In 2004, she was accused of physically assaulting her eldest daughter, Kirsten, during a quarrel. However, this was the first and only incident of such behavior, so the charges were eventually dropped. As a result of this incident, Deborah was briefly hospitalized in a psychiatric facility and then underwent rehabilitation. She was diagnosed with several disorders, which were the cause of her depression. The experts concluded that Deborah's unusual behavior was linked to her mental disorders. The doctors reported that she managed to get these issues under control after receiving therapy. However, some of Deborah's neighbors believe she is still having difficulty controlling her behavior. Her frequent aggressive outbursts affected her husband and children, and she often acted impulsively. She would yell over anything, which was alarming. The situation seemed serious, as the police were repeatedly called to her house. However, every time the officers arrived, she would calm down. After the incident with Kirsten, Deborah avoided contact with the children. Each time, when the patrol officers would arrive, find nothing amiss, and leave after advising her to remain quiet and calm. Although there were numerous complaints about her loud and hot-tempered behavior, the officers felt powerless to intervene. This situation took a toll on her family, who bore the brunt of her aggression. Deborah's mental health issues seemed to get worse, leading to high tensions. Deborah's husband, Lester, struggled to endure the constant shouting and arguments. By 2009, the situation had become unbearable. In May, Lester decided to end the relationship and filed for divorce. Deborah was devastated. It seemed she genuinely loved her husband, but due to her mental health difficulty, so she was unable to control her behavior. Lester's decision to divorce was a significant shock for Deborah. She repeatedly tried to convince her husband to heal their relationship and discuss their issues. However, Lester was so frustrated with Deborah's behavior that he rejected any talks. Lester openly told his wife that their family had no future and he would never come back. He also mentioned that he intended not only to end the marriage but also to seek custody of the children. Lester was genuinely concerned that his wife might lose control when he wasn't around their daughters, fearing she might harm them. His worries were justified as Deborah's behavior became increasingly erratic. Lester worries about the safety and well-being of his two daughters, Kelsey and Kirsten, but he cannot predict the tragic fate that will befall them. That same month, after Lester declared his intention to divorce, Deborah attempted to end her life. She ingested a lethal dose of antidepressants, but was saved by the doctor's quick response. The most distressing aspect of this incident was that Deborah did this in front of her daughters, making her husband even more worried about her mental health. He feared that the stress of the divorce could worsen Deborah's illnesses. Unfortunately, resolving the legal issues of divorce is time-consuming, making the divorce process complicated and difficult. Nevertheless, Lester was determined to proceed with the divorce to protect the children from their unstable mother. Deborah's mental health issues clearly worsened after her divorce proceedings started. She and her children moved in with her mother. Naturally, Deborah suffered the most, but her frequent outbursts of anger and constant aggression also affected the children. Lester wanted to resolve all the issues quickly to minimize the trauma for the girls. Unfortunately, time was not on his side. Deborah attempted to end her life, which was a shock for the children. They couldn't understand their mother's behavior or the struggles she faced. Meanwhile, Deborah, at 30 years old, risked losing everything she had built with her husband over the years. Her world was falling apart, so it was no surprise that she was deeply shocked. Lester was determined to take action. He understood how serious Deborah's problems were and the danger she posed to herself and others. After Deborah's attempted to end her life, Lester insisted that her contact a psychiatric care center, believing she would receive professional help, an accurate diagnosis, and appropriate treatment there. Deborah took his advice and was admitted on May 22, which came as a great relief to Lester. During her treatment, the children stayed with their father, Lester. He also attempted to obtain a restraining order to keep the children away from their mother. During this time, Lester decided that he should seek full custody of both children. He believed Deborah was unable to control herself and tried his best to ensure the children's safety. Lester has repeatedly applied to court to limit Deborah's meeting and contact with the two girls Kirsten and Kelsey. It was expected that she would not be discharged from the hospital after just 2 weeks. Lester believes that such a short period of treatment was not enough for Deborah to control her behavior, so she remains a threat to her children. However, she was discharged on June 4. By this time, Deborah had not succeeded in gaining full custody despite her efforts. The judge denied issuing a restraining order to limit Deborah's communication with her daughters, considering it excessive. The judge believed the children were not in danger because she had received treatment. A temporary arrangement was made where Deborah would have custody of the children on weekends, while Lester would care for them on weekdays. The day after the custody hearing, on a Friday, June 5, 2009, Deborah planned to pick up the kids around 6 p.m. Although Lester doesn't want to be away from his daughters, he had to comply with the court orders. He had no choice but to hand the children over to Deborah when she arrived to take them for the weekend. Kirsten and Kelsey were happy to see their mother despite her previous rejections. Kirsten and Kelsey genuinely loved her, missed her, and enjoyed spending time with her when she was in a good mood. The eldest daughter, Kirsten, even posted on social media that she would see her mom the next day and expressed her excitement. However, they had no idea of the horrors that awaited. It seemed like a long-anticipated reunion, and Deborah was also eager to see her daughters. During a conversation with Lester, she mentioned that she had a big surprise planned for the children. In reality, a terrible plan had formed in Deborah's mind, which she intended to carry out. Instead of going home, Deborah drove with the children for a while and arrived at an abandoned house near Highway 77. It was a strange and eerie place to take the children. But the girls trusted their mother and followed her, eagerly anticipating the promised surprise. They were impatiently waiting for their mother to organize a special event for them. However, after they entered the house, Deborah pulled out a weapon. Kelsey quickly realized what was happening, but it was too late. She managed to shout to Kirsten to run away. However, Kirsten didn't listen. She charged at their mother, trying to take the knife to protect Kirsten. The struggle was unequal. Deborah stabbed her youngest daughter Kelsey several times. Kelsey was already down, and the eldest daughter Kirsten was desperately fighting with their mother. She pleaded for her to stop, shouting, "This is madness," but Deborah seemed oblivious, ignoring her pleas. Having dealt with Kelsey, Deborah turned on Kirsten, who tried to escape. Deborah struck her, but the wounds were not as deep. The girl began to bleed heavily. Despite this, she clung to life, begging her mother to stop and spare her. Kirsten expressed her desire to live, and perhaps this plea helped Deborah finally regain her senses. She halted the attack and began pacing nervously around the rooms of the abandoned house. In a state of shock, Deborah called the rescue service and confessed that she had killed her child, saying multiple times that she had done so and apologized for her actions. When asked for her location, she informed them that she was in an abandoned house on Highway 77 and mentioned that one of the children was still alive, urging them to hurry and call an ambulance to save the one who wasn't dead. The dispatcher inquired about her name, but Deborah refused to disclose it, stating that she would not reveal her identity. She was pacing around the house, while Kirsten was still alive and pleading for help. Deborah was overwhelmed and couldn't explain what had happened. She asked the dispatcher not to shoot her, stressing that she didn't have a gun. She gave precise directions to the location so law enforcement and medics could find the abandoned house where she had harmed Kirsten and Kelsey. Deborah said one of the girls was already dead, and the other was barely hanging on, as she had cut her throat and was bleeding. She urged them to arrive as quickly as possible, otherwise, the girls' chances of survival were slim. Deborah spoke calmly to the dispatcher, despite being a bit excited. Her voice was generally calm and cold. The dispatcher found Deborah's behavior strange and began to suspect that she had no control over the situation. While waiting for law enforcement, Deborah alternated between calmness and shouting nervously, even insulting the dispatcher. The operator remained composed, continuing the conversation to prevent Deborah from doing anything reckless. Deborah mentioned that if they didn't hurry, she might lose control and harm her second child. She said this completely calmly and without any emotion. The dispatcher realized the situation was extremely serious and that Deborah was unstable. Deborah, who had mental health issues, spoke about her daughters as if they were objects, one whom she has eliminated from her life, while the other is in danger. However, this did not particularly bother Deborah, as she was mainly concerned about her own safety. Deborah repeatedly asked the dispatcher to ensure that the police wouldn't shoot her when they arrived. Although she understood the seriousness of the crime, her focus was on her own well-being, even though one of her daughters is dead, and the other daughter is barely alive. This thing was inconsistent with recent when she tried to end her life, which occurred shortly before the tragedy. However, Deborah clearly did not want to suffer. But is she ready to take responsibility for her actions? The police arrived at the scene and found Deborah on the street, still talking on the phone. She raised her hands to show she had dropped the knife and was unarmed. She repeatedly told the officers not to shoot her, insisting she had no weapons, was not dangerous, and would not attack. Deborah directed the police to an abandoned house where 2 bloody bodies were found inside. Although Deborah was a nurse, she did not attempt to help the children. While speaking to the dispatcher, she walked around the abandoned house and then went outside to avoid seeing the girls' bodies. Deborah wandered around the courtyard while Kirsten sat in blood next to her dead younger sister, Kelsey. Deborah's car was in the garage of the abandoned house, with a small knife on the car roof, the same knife she used to commit the massacre. The police quickly found the knife and arrested Deborah, placing her under constant surveillance due to concerns she might try to harm herself. Inside the abandoned building, officers encountered a horrifying scene. They discovered 2 girls. One of them, Kelsey, was in the bathroom, covered in blood. Because of her injuries, she died at that moment, having bled out in less than a minute. Kelsey was only 12 years old, and her mother had stabbed her with such force that she succumbed to the bleeding almost instantly. It's hard to imagine what Kirsten went through. She was found with similar injuries in the bedroom, but was still alive when rescuers arrived. Kirsten lay in a pool of her own blood, her eyes indifferent, indicating she had lost a big amount of blood. Quick action was crucial to save her life. Her throat was cut from right to left, damaging her airways and one of the main arteries. Surprisingly, her mother, Deborah, a nurse, attempted to clamp the wound to stop the bleeding while waiting for the medics. This may increase her chances of survival. In an emergency situation, the doctors rushed Kirsten out of the abandoned house and took her to Parkland Hospital in Dallas. They performed an emergency operation and battled to save her life for hours. Miraculously, the girl survived. After 4 days, Kirsten was moved from intensive care to a regular ward. Her recovery was incredible, especially since it was initially thought she wouldn't make it. However, her challenges were far from over. Though she narrowly escaped death, a more troubling fact was that she and her sister were found in that abandoned house, having been attacked by their own mother. It's hard to comprehend the extent of the post-traumatic shock Kirsten experienced. During the summer, she was recovering from the operation, trying to come to terms with the fact that her younger sister Kelsey is dead and the fact that her mother was a murderer. At the time of the crime, Deborah lived with her mother in the small town of Malacca, Texas, which had a population of just 2,000 people. Investigators reviewed Deborah's cell phone records and discovered that after taking the children from their father, Deborah headed to Malakoff. There, she seemed to wander along the roads for a while, then she eventually stopping the abandoned house. Detectives believed Deborah was searching for a place to harm the children. Examining the actions of people with mental disorders is difficult, yet the incident in the abandoned house provides disturbing things into Deborah's motives. When life falls apart, depression and mental issues can lead some women to feel that ending their lives is the only option. In many cases, they kill their children first, believing it to be a merciful act. Under the strain of mental illness, a mother may think that her family's collapse will doom her children to endless suffering. In this mindset, she views murder as a way to free them from pain and hardship. Often, these women then take their own lives. In this situation, it's evident that Deborah had no intention of dying. She was frightened and did not harm herself, even fearing that the police might shoot her, showing that she valued her life. The murders of Kirsten and Kelsey were clearly motivated by revenge, intended to hurt Lester extreme pain. She aimed to deliver a cunning and cruel blow to him. The incident was truly alarming. Kirsten and Kelsey's father, Lester, tried to give this case a big push to draw attention to the trial, literally the day after the judge refused to issue a restraining order against Deborah. Instead, the judge agreed at the hearing that she would have custody of her daughter by the end of the week. This decision later raised many questions about whether the judge considered this decision reckless. Unfortunately, Lester's worst fears were confirmed. Deborah killed Kelsey and almost took the life of Kirsten. Lester tried his best to convince the judge that his daughters were in mortal danger. Under no circumstances were they allowed to see Deborah unsupervised. However, the judge maintained that their main goal is to strengthen and unite families, encourage parents to cooperate with each other, to ensure children receive love from both parents. This decision ultimately led to devastating consequences, but the judge's actions were still deemed legal, despite the tragedy that followed. The district attorney stated that it's not fair to blame only the judge for this situation. According to him, responsibility belongs to many parties: the doctors who allowed Deborah to leave the hospital, Lester, along with Deborah. Deborah was expected to face severe punishment due to her past actions. She had previously shown anger and aggression towards her children, including attempting to harm Kirsten. However, the decision to lift the prohibition order on her is still controversial and raises many questions. Generally, in 99% of cases, shared custody benefits children, allowing both parents to support, love, and communicate with them, fostering healthy development. Yet, this approach fails when a parent has serious mental health issues. Child Protection Services claim they were unaware of Deborah's behavior. Staff stated that if they had known about her try to end her life in front of the children, she would never have been allowed unsupervised contact. From that point on, people also focused on the possibility that the family had clearly become victims of leniency on the part of the mental hospital and the justice system. However, this could not be proven. It was known that Deborah had been in and out of such institutions multiple times, with discharges that came too soon. A comprehensive diagnosis typically requires at least 3 months of testing and observation. Treatment and medication may be prescribed based on test results, but their effectiveness is not guaranteed. Doctors then closely monitor the patient's condition, behavioral changes, and the progression of the disease, adjusting medication as needed. This process can take up to a month. And discharge is only considered after a stable improvement in the patient's condition. However, Deborah was released after just a few weeks, suggesting that she did not undergo the full range of required examinations and tests. Deborah promised Lester that she would take Kirsten and Kelsey out and give them a surprise. She wanted to plan a fun evening with activities like singing and reading. However, just 4 hours later, she called emergency services and confessed to killing her children. Her trial lasted a year, and on May 27, 2010, Deborah Jeter was formally charged with aggravated murder and attempted murder. Throughout the proceedings, Deborah was held in prison due to the high bail, which was unaffordable and reflected the severity of the crime. As a result, she remained behind bars until the start of her trial. Deborah's defense team proposed a deal to the prosecution due to the complexity and sensitive nature of the case. Prosecutors fear that Deborah's mental illness could lead to her being released without jail time. Furthermore, a full trial would require Kirsten, Deborah's daughter who had miraculously survived her mother's attack, to testify in court. To spare Kirsten the trauma of reliving the horrific incident, Deborah agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge, hoping to avoid the death penalty under Texas law. About a year after the murder, Lester and Kirsten visited Deborah in prison. Deborah explained that, due to the turmoil in her life at the time, so she genuinely believed killing her youngest daughter Kelsey was the only way to protect her children from future suffering. She thought that the family's breakup would cause everyone immense pain and, in her mentally unstable state, she saw the murder as the only solution, a twisted form of salvation. Deborah expressed regret about what happened, but she admitted that she still hates Lester and blames him for the tragedy, and she will never forgive him. Kirsten reminisced warmly about the past with her mother. They talked calmly and even laughed together. This was the last time Deborah could peacefully meet with her loved ones. Afterward, she was moved to another prison and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In her situation, this is seen as a lenient punishment because, without admitting guilt, she could have faced the death penalty. Lester was deeply shocked by the incidents, but inspired by his daughter, he decided to move forward. In 2015, he rebuilt his life, remarried, and he and Kirsten removed their social media profiles. Eventually, Kirsten reactivated her account but set it to private. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Magwad family. The Magwad family consisted of parents Cruz and Lila, and their teenage children, 16-year-old Louis and 18-year-old Gwen. Louis Magwad, the youngest member of the family, was known for his charisma. Despite his calm nature, he had an incredible energy about him. People often sharing their deepest feelings with Louis because he radiated warmth and understanding that made others feel comfortable opening up. He was accepting, inquisitive, and creative, enjoying activities like playing guitar, reading, and drawing. After finishing high school, Louis hoped to study law. Gwen, the older sister, was known for her hardworking and lively nature. From a young age, she had climbed through all the ranks of the Scout movement, racking up an impressive collection of badges for her achievements. During her final years of high school, Gwen took pre-med classes at a nearby university, aiming to pursue a career in the medical field. In her free time, she devoted herself to volunteering, always ready to help those in need. At a mutual friends party, Gwen met Janice, who worked as a nanny. During the event, Janice was busy taking care of children. Gwen was surprised to learn that someone her age was already working. As they became friends, Gwen asked Janice how she became a nanny. Janice revealed that her parents had abandoned her on a cargo ship, where she was later found by a kind stranger. This kind-hearted person tried to find Janice's family by posting her information and photo on social media and the internet, but no one claimed her. As a result, Janice ended up in the care of the Philippine Social Services. Her first clear memory was feeling lost on a big ship, longing for a carefree childhood and the comfort of a mother after a small fall. Janice aspired to academic success so she could go to college, but her circumstances forced her to work instead of study. Gwen and Janice grew closer as they shared various activities, including experimenting with makeup and hairstyles, taking photos, and creating TikTok videos. While filming a dance routine they had choreographed, Louis, the playful younger brother, would often make jokes from behind the camera, causing everyone to laugh. Their friendship was so enjoyable that the Magwad siblings suggested to their parents that Janice be welcomed into their close-knit family. One day, the siblings called a family meeting in the living room to discuss adding a fifth member to their household. They proposed taking in Gwen's 17-year-old friend, Janice, an orphan who had been working as a live-in maid in various homes since she was 8 years old, without any opportunity for education. Louis and Gwen asked their parents to allow Janice to live with them, offering to share household responsibilities in exchange for providing her with a stable home and emotional support. Cruz and Lila had always taught their children to help those in need, so after careful consideration, they agreed to give Janice a chance at a better life as part of their family. In the Philippines, a young woman without proper resources or support could end up homeless. The Magwad family, deeply religious, saw their ability to help others as a blessing from God. They welcomed Janice into their family through a formal adoption process, completing all necessary legal procedures. Mr. Magwad worked as an elementary school teacher and was highly respected by his colleagues. His wife, Lila, was the principal at the same school. Although their income was modest, they were considered wealthy in their community because they owned land and could provide for their children financially. Gwen and Louis's parents were very strict and responsible. They avoided spoiling their children with expensive gifts and did not give them too much freedom. Each family member was given specific tasks to do around the house and was expected to help with household chores. The children were also expected to do well in school, attend church on Sundays, and be supportive of each other. Despite their parents' tough approach, Gwen and Louis truly admired and appreciated their parents' caring and loving nature. The Magwad family's decision to adopt Janice highlighted their close and supportive relationship. After the adoption, Janice moved into Louis's old room, and he began sleeping on the living room sofa. The family welcomed Janice with open arms, making her feel like one of their own. They took care of her basic needs and enrolled her in school, so she no longer had to worry about supporting herself. This was the first time Janice could focus on being young and exploring her future aspirations. The adoption strengthened the bond between the siblings. They continued to enjoy activities together, such as photography sessions and family vacations, and returned from their breaks feeling refreshed. However, the transition wasn't without its difficulties. Many adoptive parents face challenges when adopting a new child to the family. The child has to get used to a new environment, learn new rules, and develop trust, which takes time. Fortunately, the Magwads benefited from Cruz and Lila's education, patience, and ability to relate to their children. The incident occurred a few months after Janice joined the Magwad household, which had a small pig farm. After selling a piglet, Cruz had $1,200 left over, which he kept in a container in the living room for emergencies. However, when Cruz's elderly parents were hospitalized that month and he needed money for medical expenses, he checked the container and found it was completely empty. Each member of the household strongly denied taking the money. Since the Magwads were not very rich, they conducted a thorough search of their home to find the missing funds. After hours of searching, one of the siblings found a hidden compartment in Janice's backpack. Janice was overwhelmed and confessed to taking the money, revealing that she had hidden the $200 in a secret pouch she had made in her bag. She had trouble explaining why she did it and started crying. Cruz was not angry, just confused. Janice was afraid of being punished and possibly kicked out for breaking the trust of the Magwads family. However, the Magwads family understood that Janice had a very different childhood compared to Gwen and Louis. They knew that Janice had often had to fend for herself, and as a result, it wasn't uncommon for children from orphanages to struggle with stealing when they first joined a new household. This behavior often comes from a deep-seated need to survive, a fear of being abandoned and left with nothing. This causes people to stockpile resources for the future. The Magwad family felt disappointed, but they didn't think the situation was extremely serious. To them, it was similar to times when their own child made mistakes. Now that Janice was a part of their family, they would not abandon her. They tried to reassure her, making it clear that she didn't have to worry about her future because she was a valued member of their household. After this upsetting event, the family grew closer and more united. When school shifted online, Gwen helped Janice with her studies. On December 10, 2021, as their parents were getting ready for work, Janice called them Mom and Dad for the first time, which should have been a special moment. But something unexpected was revealed. Janice, their adopted child, was not an orphan as they thought. She had been secretly communicating with her biological mother through social media. On December 10, 2021, Cruz found his two children lying still in the living room. He knelt beside them, trying to find a pulse, but they had none. Overcome with grief, he looked up to the heavens, wondering why they were taken from him. He then remembered his third child and searched for her. Cruz went upstairs, hoping not to find another lifeless body, and called out for Janice. He heard a door creak open and rushed into the room, frantically checking her for injuries to make sure she was safe. Janice was unharmed, but for some unknown reason, she was completely soaked. For a moment, Cruz was overcome with fear, mistakenly thinking the liquid was blood. Janice, still trying to catch her breath, told her father that 3 people had broken into their house and attacked Gwen and Louis. She had run to her room and hidden under the bed, frozen with fear as she listened to the screams coming from downstairs. She felt helpless, unable to do anything to help her siblings until the screaming stopped. Despite the chaos, Janice had decided to take a bath, which seemed like a strange thing to do after what had just happened. Cruz was confused by Janice's actions, but he tried to comfort her and stay strong, even though he felt like his world was falling apart. Lila arrived immediately after the police, finding Janice soaked in water and tears on the veranda. She hugged the girl tightly, thanking God that she was safe, and then asked where Gwen and Louis were. Cruz had the difficult task of telling Lila the devastating news that 2 of her children had been attacked. As the principal of an elementary school, Lila was usually calm and in control, even in emergencies, but now she was completely broken. She had no idea what to do, no plan, and no answers. Lila and Janice held each other, crying, as their home was cordoned off with police tape, marking it as a crime scene. The police found several potential weapons in the living room, including a bloody baseball bat, a hammer, multiple kitchen knives, and broken glass bottles. One of the knives was located near the entrance. The authorities collected and documented all of these items to see if they matched the injuries on the Magwat siblings' bodies. Gwen had multiple stab wounds on her face, chest, and abdomen. The fact that she was struck in the face suggests that the killer may have had a personal motive, such as jealousy. The brutality of these incidents is extremely difficult to understand. Gwen's body showed defensive injuries on her hands and wrists, indicating that she fought back intensely until the end. Her hair was matted with dried blood, and one of her ears was severed. The coroner found 51 stab wounds on Louis's body. Such extreme violence goes beyond simply taking a life, suggesting a deep-seated personal hatred. Their bodies were so severely mutilated that mortuary staff had to close the wounds before their parents could make funeral arrangements. The initial investigation was based on testimonies that suggested the criminals targeted a wealthy family in the area, believing no one would be home. However, when detectives saw valuable items like a TV, phone, and laptop in plain sight, they dismissed the burglary theory. Another theory involved a family dispute over land, as Lila had siblings who claimed ownership. Despite rumors of a dispute, investigators found no evidence to support this theory and eventually abandoned it. The community and family sought answers, fearing for their safety after the brutal attack that didn't even spare teenagers. The entire investigative unit focused on solving the crime, and the mayor offered a $5,000 reward for information leading to the attacker's arrest. Detectives conducted a wider search of the house and surrounding area. During this search, they discovered a small pond-like stream near the family of Magwat house. Fortunately, they spotted a plastic bag stuck on a branch in the stream. The bag contained blood-stained clothes that were probably worn by the perpetrator after the crime. After finding this evidence, the police thoroughly researched the Magwat family house for any potential clues or suspicious items. Meanwhile, online users weren't convinced by the burglary or land dispute theories, so they started their own investigation. Although it's unconfirmed, they believe the crime was committed by one of the survivors. Normally, such speculation would be hurtful to those who have already suffered, but in this case, the online users found some evidence to support their claims. For example, many found it suspicious that Janice took a bath after hiding from the attackers instead of checking on her siblings or alerting someone for help. Online investigators think that Janice might have taken the bath to wash off her siblings' blood after harming them. Cruz Magwad eventually realized that Janice's actions were unusual after the initial shock of what happened wore off. At first, he was too relieved to find his adopted daughter safe to think about her behavior. However, he found it strange that she didn't respond when he was desperately calling for his children, considering their home was small and she should have heard him. She only appeared after Cruz found the bodies of Gwen and Lewis, which raised even more suspicions. The inconsistencies in Janice's account raised doubts about her. Her claim that the attackers thoroughly searched her room without finding her seemed implausible. Blood droplets found in her room, which she attributed to the killers, added to the suspicion. The timeline of events also raised questions. Janice messaged her family group at 2:48 p.m., nearly an hour after her siblings' estimated time of death at 2 p.m. This delay in seeking help, coupled with her use of fun emojis in a social media post during a supposedly traumatic situation, seemed at odds with the behavior expected from someone in genuine distress. Amid this period, Lila was utterly devastated as detectives proceeded with their scrutiny. She grieved profoundly for her lost offspring. As her sorrow momentarily subsided, she found herself simply curling up, lying in wait for the grief and the sharp sting of loss to overwhelm her anew. Seeking a diversion, Lila began tidying the home, initiating with Janice's chamber. During this task, she encountered an ID card unfamiliar to her within their home. Swiftly delivering it to the authorities, the ID was that of a 17-year-old male known primarily by the moniker Marlon, whose actual name was withheld. Lila had no acquaintance with Marlon, nor had she ever encountered him. Yet, neighbors witnessed the youth en route to the Magwad family residence on the day in question. A shopkeeper also recognized him, providing directions to Cruz and Lila's abode. Additionally, a motorcyclist reported transporting Marlon to the location on the day the tragedy struck. This discovery marked a significant breakthrough in the investigation, prompting the question of how Marlon's ID found its way into Janice's quarters. When officials called Janice in for questioning, they didn't expect her to be able to explain the presence of the ID of Marlon in her room. However, Janice calmly acknowledged knowing the boy and then, through tears, admitted her involvement in the tragic death of her siblings. Due to her status as a minor, Janice's confession wasn't made public, which left some ambiguity about the extent of her involvement in the tragic events. It's known that Marlon, who worked at a church handling maintenance for services, had some kind of relationship with Janice, although media reports didn't detail the nature of their connection or how they came to know each other. The police discovered a photo on Janice's social media with another young man, which led to an investigation. This young man, presumably her boyfriend, had seen Janice's online plea for help and tried to contact her that day. When he called, someone answered but didn't speak, so he hung up thinking Janice might have exaggerated the situation. The investigation took a turn when the police located Marlon. His denial of involvement became untenable when Gwen's phone was found in his possession. To make matters worse, he had recently been arrested for possession of illegal substances. Despite her mother giving her up to the Magwad family, who thought they were taking in an orphan, Janice actually kept in secret contact with her biological mother, Michelle, and with Juanita through social media. This revealed that her story was more complex than initially thought. Janice's childhood was marked by great hardships, with her family struggling to meet basic needs like food. Her diet consisted mainly of sweet potatoes due to lack of resources. The situation was made worse by her father, who frequently drank to cope with financial problems, further increasing the family's difficulties. The details about how Janice became separated from her family are still unclear. It's unknown whether she was abandoned or simply got lost, but it's certain that she was found alone on a cargo ship on September 22, 2013. The Magwads offered Janice a loving family environment that she had never experienced before. Seeing the care and protection that Gwen and Lewis received from their parents, in contrast to her own traumatic childhood, Janice experienced a mix of emotions. Although she was adopted, she received the same affection as the Magwads' biological children and was expected to contribute to household chores in the same way. Janice struggled to cope with expectations, shared affection, and family responsibilities. She craved exclusive attention and wanted to make the most of everything the Magwads could offer. Her desire to enjoy the perks of being an only child clashed with the reality of her situation, where love and material benefits had to be shared with other family members. Janice knew she could never surpass Gwen and Lewis in the eyes of the Magwads due to their biological connection, and she saw eliminating them as the only solution to this inequality. The subsequent investigation uncovered text messages in Tagalog on Janice's phone, suspected to be conversations with Marlon, revealing her dark intentions. In these messages, she expressed the desire to end the lives of 7 people without naming them and believed that God would forgive her for her actions if she repented. 6 days after the attack, on December 16, authorities arrested Janice and Marlon. Due to their young age, they were treated as juvenile offenders and not placed in regular prisons. In separate trials, each received a 10-year sentence for assaulting Gwen and an additional 22 years for murdering 16-year-old Lewis. The relatively lenient sentences, given because of their age, caused public outrage and strong disapproval from the Magwad parents. Seeking justice, Cruz and Lila appealed to the media and national officials, calling for a review of the court decisions. During an emotional interview, Lila initially expressed her willingness to forgive Janice, believing her terrible actions were a result of her disadvantaged upbringing and limited opportunities. However, everything changed when Lila met Janice face-to-face while she was in custody. As Lila looked into the eyes of the girl she had once considered her own, she hoped to see signs of remorse or inner conflict. Instead, she was met with a cold, detached stare filled with resentment and devoid of empathy or regret. This shocking encounter forced Lila to withdraw her offer of forgiveness, realizing that the girl they had once welcomed as a blessing had actually brought them an unimaginable nightmare. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Nikita Bergenstrom. Nikita Bergenstrom, born on June 13, 1965, in Pori, Finland, had a difficult childhood. His mother found it hard to manage his behavior, particularly at school where he was known to be a bully. He had a very hot temper, and he clashed often with those around him. By the time Nikita reached young adulthood, he was already encountering problems with the law. This included confrontations with the police and a prison sentence at just 19 years old. It was during this period that Nikita met 17-year-old Marita Radulami. Marita also had a miserable life. The two of them committed crimes together, breaking into houses and stealing from stores in Finland, Sweden, and Denmark. The couple's dynamic was tumultuous, with Marita describing Nikita as controlling and violent. After serving time, 22-year-old Nikita was released from a prison in Turku, Finland, on May 1, 1988. Marita had been eagerly awaiting his release. And the couple soon set their sights on traveling to the Mediterranean, a long-held dream of Nikita's. Before they set off on their adventure, the couple took 2 Angora rabbits with them, which Marita was particularly fond of and took special care to keep safe while traveling. On July 3, they arrived in a mall, Sweden, near the Finnish border. During the evening, Nikita committed a burglary and stole a shotgun from a house, planning to use it for an armed robbery. After the burglary, they broke into another nearby home and were later seen escaping the scene on a bicycle they had stolen from the homeowner. Stan Nielsen, 40 years old, the father of the family, had his house broken into, and his 15-year-old son, Fredrik, chased Nikita into a nearby cemetery after he stole their bicycle. When Stan demanded that Nikita return the bicycle, Nikita refused. Instead, he pulled out a shotgun he had stolen moments earlier and pointed it at Stan. With the shotgun aimed at Stan, Nikita pulled the trigger. And Stan fell to the ground, dying instantly from a single gunshot wound. Fredrik, standing beside his father, cried out in horror alongside Marita and begged Nikita not to fire again. However, Nikita disregarded their pleas and fired the shotgun a second time, killing Fredrik instantly. Then, Ewer, Stan's wife and Fredrik's mother, set out to find the pair. She came across an old car that Nikita and Marita had stolen and were now using as shelter. Ewer approached the car and tapped on the window. Nikita responded violently, grabbing Ewer and killing her with a knife. The exact manner of Ewer's death, whether stabbed or having her throat slit, remains unclear due to conflicting sources. An 11-year-old boy, who was camping in the backyard with his friend, was the only family member to survive the attack, remaining unaware of the horror that unfolded just a short distance away. After committing the murders, Marita and Nikita fled the scene. Their getaway car eventually broke down, leading them to steal a replacement vehicle. Marita was determined to keep the rabbits they had with them as they continued their escape. They discarded the shotgun used in the crime and the clothes they were wearing. The murder weapon was later found by the authorities. As news of the crime spread rapidly across the country, local law enforcement urged anyone with information to come forward and report. Marita felt overwhelmed and expressed her desire to return home to Nikita, but he threatened to harm her rabbits and then herself if she refused to follow his orders. However, it's reported that the trail of rabbit droppings left at each abandoned vehicle the couple used played a significant role in their identification. Because the authorities knew about Marita and Nikita, so they was eventually charged. Their photos were subsequently distributed nationwide. Marita and Nikita managed to evade capture for about a week by sneaking past roadblocks and police patrols. Eventually, they were caught in Denmark, just over a week after the murders took place. During their trial, Nikita refused to confess, but Marita provided a full confession and ultimately incriminated herself. Both Marita and Nikita shifted the blame to each other, but the court found Marita's account to be more credible. A psychiatric evaluation initially deemed Marita and Nikita fit to stand trial. However, a forensic psychiatrist later diagnosed Nikita with an antisocial and narcissistic personality disorder. This condition led to uncontrolled outbursts of aggression and a lack of empathy for others. Notably, this is not the first time Nikita has been in trouble with the law, it was actually his 12th. As a result, Nikita received a life sentence for the 3 murders, with the possibility of parole. In contrast, his accomplice, Marita, was given a 2-year sentence for her role in assault, battery, and theft. She only served 1 year of her sentence before being released. Upon her release from jail, she relocated to a different town and changed her name, starting her life anew. Meanwhile, Nikita was transferred to Finland to serve the remainder of his sentence. Over the years, he has made many escapes in 1991, 1994, 2002, and 2004. In 1994, Nikita took a teacher hostage, and in 2002, he was aided by his wife. Following his recapture, Nikita tried to end his life. He also briefly escaped in 2006, evading capture for 2 days before being caught in Helsinki. Despite his repeated attempts to escape, but Nikita was eventually granted parole in February 2008 after spending 19 years behind bars. That same year, he underwent a name change, shifting from his birth name of Juha Valiaka to Nikita Faukantine. He would go on to change his name one more time in 2013, adopting the surname Bergenström and becoming Nikita Bergenström. It was 2 months after his release, Nikita was arrested again for violating his parole terms. The reasons behind his rearrest included drunk driving, operating a vehicle without a license, and running a taxi service without a license. He later was released in February 2009. After 2009, Nikita's life became unstable of a blur, as he apparently repeatedly found himself in and out of prison due to various minor offenses. In 2011, he managed to escape from prison once more. 3 years later, in 2014, Nikita was allegedly involved in a violent fight with 2 inmates, who were possibly instructed or bribed by a prison guard. However, an investigation did not find sufficient evidence to confirm this. Nikita continued his pattern of escape and rearrest. He fled prison again in 2015 and resurfaced in 2018, receiving an 80-day prison sentence for drunk driving. Currently, his exact location remains unknown, but it appears Nikita is no longer incarcerated. Nikita's past is filled with petty crimes, but what drove him to commit 3 murders in one night remains unclear. The severity of his crimes on July 3, 1988, is particularly disturbing. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Charlene Gallego. Charlene Gallego, born Charlene William, born on October 10, 1956, into a middle-class family. Parents are Mercedes and Charles. As the only child in the family, she was always pampered by her parents because of their utmost love. She excelled in school, being a clever but shy student, and showed promise as a talented violinist. However, her life took a turn for the worse during her teenage years, plagued by issues with substance abuse, drinking, and a gambling habit. By the age of 21, Charlene had been through 2 marriages and divorces and was running her own flower and glassware boutique, set up with her parents' help. She was also pursuing further education at the university. Charlene met Gerald in Sacramento, California, on September 10, 1977, just before her 21st birthday. Gerald, who was born in July 1946, was 10 years Charlene's senior and had an extensive history of crime. His upbringing was marked by instability. With his mother working as a sex worker and having multiple abusive partners, while his father, also a career criminal, was estranged from the family. Gerald's father was ultimately executed in Mississippi's gas chamber for killing 2 police officers during a prison escape. Gerald began his life of crime at a young age. By age 6, he had committed burglary and other sex crimes. At 12 years old, he was charged with lewd and lascivious acts for assaulting a 6-year-old girl. When he met Charlene, Gerald had amassed 23 arrests and had served time in prison for robbery. He had also been convicted of various other charges, including rape, incest, vehicle theft, and assaults with a deadly weapon. Gerald's first marriage was to a 21-year-old woman when he was 16. They had a daughter, Krista, who would later file charges against her father for sexual abuse in 1978. Gerald went on to marry several more times, but his relationships were short-lived due to his violent and abusive behavior. Gerald met Charlene, and they quickly formed a connection, moving in together within a week. However, Charlene soon discovered Gerald's controlling, manipulative nature. Their sex life was initially healthy, but it became a cause for concern when Gerald revealed he struggled with becoming aroused in consensual relationships. Gerald also admitted to having fantasies about non-consensual partners, which he referred to as sex slaves. To address this issue, the couple tried using role-playing, but unfortunately, this approach did not work as they had hoped. Eventually, Gerald began to devise a plan. At the time of the first murder, his girlfriend Charlene was 2 months pregnant, but she later had an abortion because Gerald did not want to be a father again. On September 11, 1978, 2 teenagers, 17 years old Rhonda Sheff and 16 years old Kippy Vort, disappeared from the Country Club Plaza shopping center in Sacramento. Charlene lured them into their 1973 Dodge van by offering marijuana. The girls climbed into the back of the van, where Gerald was waiting. He threatened them with a .25 caliber pistol, tied them up, and ordered Charlene to drive toward the Sierra Nevada mountains. As they went further and left the residential area, he told Charlene to stop in a remote area. He then took the girls away one at a time and sexually assaulted them. After returning to the van, Gerald told Charlene to drive to her friend's house to create an alibi, also added that she should go back by Oldsmobile. Charlene followed his instructions, and when she came back, she found Kippy and Rhonda in the van, who were then forced into the back of the vehicle. On their way back to Sacramento, Gerald had the car pulled over. He attacked both girls, knocking them unconscious with a tire iron, and then shot them in the head. Gerald and Charlene left the bodies behind and drove away. Charlene and Gerald chose to stay out of sight for a while, so they left California and temporarily moved to Reno, Nevada. Charlene's parents advised her to take her cousin's birth certificates to help Gerald get the necessary documents for work. Gerald also obtained a driver's license under the name Stephen Fail. While in Reno, the couple found regular jobs and led a normal life. They even got married during this period, but the time they do not commit a crime is only temporary. On June 24, 1979, Gerald and Charlene went to the Washoe County Fair. 14 years old, Brenda Judd and 13 years old Sandra Colley were heading home when Charlene approached them as they were leaving the fairgrounds. She asked if they would help her distribute leaflets and promised to pay them. The girls agreed and followed Charlene to her van to get more leaflets. Both girls got into the van, and shortly after, Gerald, who had been watching from a distance, came up to the vehicle. He was carrying a weapon and threatened the girls before tying them up. He then instructed Charlene to drive towards I-80 but made a stop at a hardware store first, where he picked up a hammer and a shovel. Then Charlene drove the vehicle into the hills. In the back of the van, the 2 young girls, Brenda and Sandra, were assaulted. Similar to the previous incident, Gerald and Charlene parked in a remote area, where they let Brenda and Sandra out one at a time before killing them. Gerald then buried their bodies using a shovel he had recently bought. The next day, Charlene cleaned the van to eliminate any forensic evidence left by the victims. Gerald kept the shovel and hammer he had used, and a few months later, Gerald and Charlene returned to Sacramento. After returning to California, Gerald was eager to find another victim. They decided on the Sunrise Mall in Citrus Heights, about 20 minutes outside of Sacramento, as their next target. On April 24, 1980, they chose 2 17-year-old girls, Stacy Redican and Karen Twix. Similar to their previous victims, Stacy and Karen were lured into the back of the van with the promise of drugs. Gerald, armed with a .357 Magnum, threatened and tied them up. Afterward, Stacy and Karen were taken east on I-80 and sexually assaulted during the drive. Gerald instructed Charlene to take them to Limerick Canyon, where both girls were murdered. On their way home, Charlene threw Gerald's hammer out the window. Around the same time, Charlene became pregnant again. This time, Gerald was pleased with the news, and they decided to keep the child. While on vacation in Oregon on July 7, 1980, Gerald and Charlene committed another crime. While driving on a highway, they saw 21-year-old Linda Aguila, who was pregnant and walking home from shopping. They offered her a ride, which she accepted. Charlene drove while Gerald sexually assaulted Linda in the back of the van. After finding a place to stop, Charlene got out and wandered around until Gerald was done. In a secluded area, he took Linda away from the van, hit her on the head with a rock, and strangled her to death. Linda's body was discovered later that month in a shallow grave outside Gold Beach, Oregon. Although a witness saw Linda enter unidentified van, authorities suspected her abusive boyfriend might have been behind the crime. 9 days later, Gerald and Charlene spent the evening at the Sail and Bar in West Sacramento. After the bar closed, they waited for the bartender in the parking lot, a young woman named Virginia Muchel, because Gerald was interested in her. When Virginia left work, Gerald forced her into the van at gunpoint. Not like previous times, Gerald and Charlene drove straight home instead of to a deserted area. While Gerald sexually invaded Virginia, Charlene stayed inside their house. Afterward, they drove away, and Gerald strangled Virginia. They dumped her body outside Clarksburg, where it was later discovered by law enforcement. Regular customers at the Sail-In told investigators about Gerald and Charlene, who had been there the night before. Authorities were able to track them down, and Gerald admitted they were at the bar but claimed they had no knowledge of what happened to Virginia. Charlene said she and Gerald had gone fishing that day. Investigators found fishing line that had been used to tie Virginia's hands. But this evidence wasn't enough to file charges, causing the case to stall. Following this, Gerald became more violent and angry, leading to he and Charlene's separation. She then moved in with her parents. During this period, Gerald left town and started a relationship with another woman. However, by early November, he returned to Sacramento and asked to meet Charlene. She agreed, and on November 1st, they borrowed Charlene's parents' Oldsmobile and went to a bar. At the bar, Gerald expressed his desire to find another slave, and they then drove to the Arden Fair shopping center. Charlene was stunned when her husband exited the vehicle and came back with 2 university students, Craig Miller and Mary Sowers. They quietly got into the car as Gerald aimed a gun at them. Just as they were about to drive off, a friend of Craig noticed them and asked what was happening. Without thinking, Charlene drove out of her parking spot and sped away. Meanwhile, Craig's friend quickly noted the license plate numbers and reported the situation to the police. Charlene drove Craig and Mary into El Dorado County until Gerald told her to stop. He then forced Craig out of the car and shot him 3 times in the head. When returning to Oldsmobile, Gerald had Charlene drive them to his home, where he took Mary into the bedroom and sexually assaulted her. Later, Charlene drove them to a secluded area, where Mary was killed. The next day, when Gerald and Charlene returned to Charlene's parents' house, they found out that the police were already informed about the situation. Gerald left Charlene to face the police alone. Charlene told investigators that she and Charlene had gone to a movie in his red Triumph, but investigators were informed that the car had not moved all night. She then claimed she couldn't remember the details because she had been drinking. Meanwhile, Gerald decided he needed to move Craig's body, but it had already been discovered near Bass Lake, California. Likely in a panic, Gerald and Charlene decided to flee the state. They drove to Reno, abandoned their car, and took a bus to Salt Lake City, Utah. Back in Sacramento, Craig's friend identified Gerald from a photo taken, and Charlene's parents confirmed their son-in-law's identity, Gerald. Detectives also found that the bullets recovered from Craig's body matched those that Gerald had fired into the ceiling at his workplace. In Utah, Charlene contacted her parents for money, and they sent her money, Mercedes and Charles. Gerald and Charlene then moved to Denver, Colorado, and later to Omaha, Nebraska, where they her parents for more money. They agreed to help again but informed the FBI about the situation. The FBI was waiting for the couple at a Western Union office, where they were arrested without any issues. After being returned to California, both Gerald and Charlene pleaded not guilty. Charlene's lawyers successfully negotiated a plea deal for her. By pleading guilty to the first-degree murders of Craig, Mary, and providing testimony against Gerald, she would receive a prison sentence of just 16.5 years. Avoiding the death penalty. Charlene agreed to this deal and shared everything she knew with law enforcement. In Nevada, she also pleaded guilty to the second-degree murders of Karen and Stacy through a similar arrangement. Although California sought to overturn Charlene's plea bargain due to dissatisfaction with sentence, the charges related to the murders of Craig and Mary were dropped entirely in 1983. During her testimony, Charlene stated that she participated in the crimes because she was afraid of Gerald, describing him as violent and abusive. She claimed that he took all the money she earned and manipulated her whenever she expressed dissatisfaction. Meanwhile, Gerald tried to discredit Charlene by revealing her affair with a man other. He also labeled her as a drug addict. Gerald took the stand and gave testimony, but he revealed many inconsistencies in his testimony. He ultimately urged the jury to trust him, but they were not persuaded. As a result, Gerald Gallego was sentenced to death for the murders of Craig Miller and Mary Sowers, which occurred on June 21, 1983. He was also found guilty of the murders of Karen Twiggs and Stacy Redican. While the remains of Brenda and Sandra were discovered in Lassen County, California, he was not tried for those deaths. Gerald maintained his innocence throughout and spent a quiet life in prison until he died from cancer in 2002 at the age of 56, while still awaiting execution. In July 1997, Charlene was released from prison. While incarcerated, she gave birth to her son, also named Gerald, who was raised by her parents. Tragically, he later died while serving in the military. After her release, Charlene chose not to return to Sacramento and started using her maiden name. She has reportedly returned to the area under the name Mary Martinez and currently works for In Charity. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Brittany Gregory. Brittany Gregory was born on April 1, 1988 in Brick Township and is the youngest of 5 children. Due to her parents' divorce, she had to live with her father but still maintained a close relationship with all of her siblings, especially her older sister Brianna, who is 4 years older than her. Brittany was a model student in school and her teachers believed that she had the potential to become a scholar. However, her passion and dreams were focused on something completely different. She had an ambition to become a forensic scientist and study evidence at crime scenes. At home, Brittany enjoyed her role as the youngest child in the family. According to her mother, Brittany was spoiled, but she was not vain or arrogant. Brittany was a fan of pop culture and her idol was none other than the queen of pop, Britney Spears. Her bedroom was decorated with posters of Britney Spears. Aside from music, Brittany enjoys watching cartoons, especially SpongeBob SquarePants. And she can't stop watching TV shows about forensic science, a career she aspires to pursue. Brittany's love for forensic science often brings her closer to her mother. They share a passion for watching TV shows about the subject and often call each other to discuss episodes as they watch them. Brittany, 16, and her 20-year-old sister Brianna live with their father, Joe Dunn, and his girlfriend, Lori Peterson, in a small house near their school. Their house is down the street and near a wooded area. At the time, Brittany was in a 2-year relationship with her 18-year-old boyfriend, John Fitzgerald, a nice guy whose family approved of the relationship, and they were considered the perfect couple. On Sunday, July 11, 2004, Brittany's mother, Deborah, and her sister, Brianna, were visiting her brother and his wife, who had a newborn daughter, in the town of South Toms River, 15 miles from their home. That evening, Brittany called her mother on her cell phone at approximately 8:30 p.m. to ask for a ride to John's house. However, Brittany seemed upset. Her mother explained that she was out of town and couldn't drive Brittany, but said that her sister Brianna could be there in about an hour. Brittany agreed to wait for her sister. Approximately 45 minutes after Brittany called, Brianna was free and attempted to call her back. However, her call went unanswered, leading Brianna to assume that Brittany was either asleep or had gone to John's house with someone else. The next morning, when Brianna returned home, she found Brittany was gone, but all of her belongings, including her phone, were still in the house. This seemed unusual, as Brittany rarely left her phone behind and often informed her family of her plans. Brianna contacted Brittany's friends, but none of them knew of her sister's whereabouts. After failing to reach Brittany, Brianna decided to call John. According to John, he last spoke to Brittany on the phone on Sunday morning and they had not seen or spoken to each other since. Lori Peterson, a family friend who lived with them, said she returned home around 10 p.m. Sunday and did not find Brittany there. Brianna reported her sister missing to the police, sensing that something was wrong. Initially, the police did not believe that Brittany had actually disappeared, thinking that she might have run away or been with friends. However, Brianna explained that she had contacted Brittany's friends and boyfriend, none of whom had any information on her whereabouts. Brianna was convinced that her sister Brittany had not run away from home because she was a diligent student and spent most of her time at the library. Brittany also never left the house without notice, and all of her personal belongings, including her phone and money, were still at home. Initially, the police suspected that Brittany had run away, but after speaking with Brianna, they began a thorough investigation. First, they went to Brittany's house to check her room for clues. They confirmed that her purse, containing her phone, ID, and makeup, was still there, but they did not find anything unusual. The police interviewed everyone who lived in the house and eventually ruled out the possibility that Brittany's relatives were involved in her disappearance. Next, they expanded their search to the surrounding area, checking nearby homes, examining property, and interviewing neighbors. They are looking for potential witnesses who may have seen or heard something suspicious. While searching, officers found that Brittany's house was located at the end of the road, near a wooded area. When they spoke to neighbors, they did not see anything suspicious, except for a woman who claimed to have seen Brittany walking down the road, heading toward the wooded area. Numerous police interviews with her family, neighbor, and teachers revealed that no one had anything bad to say about Brittany. Everyone spoke very highly of her. However, her sister, Brianna, mentioned that Brittany and her boyfriend, John, had been arguing frequently recently, including one on the day she went missing. This argument upset Brittany and she wanted to visit John that evening to make up. In order to better understand John's relationship with Brittany, the police asked him to come to the police station for questioning. At the station, John reported that his last phone conversation with Brittany took place on Sunday morning. At the time, he was at the beach with friends, which upset Brittany because she was not there. The argument resulted in them not speaking to each other since then. John also revealed that he and Brittany had recently broken up. Although she knew he was dating someone else, Brittany had a hard time accepting the breakup. According to John, he had no plans to see Brittany on the night she went missing and did not know she would come to his house. He attributed the breakup to a rumor that Brittany kissed another guy at a party, which he did not witness. However, this rumor prompted him to end their relationship and start dating someone else. John last saw Brittany on July 10th, the day before she disappeared, when she gave him a letter. In the letter, Brittany expressed her desire to make amends. After receiving permission from John, the police examined the letter, which contained Brittany's apology for her actions and her desire to remain friends with John. John appeared genuinely concerned and worried about Brittany's disappearance. Despite initial suspicions, the police had no evidence linking him to her disappearance. After passing a lie detector test, he was cleared as a suspect. However, John did provide the police with one important detail. He revealed that Brittany often took a shortcut through the woods behind her father's house to visit him. This new information adds complexity to the case, leading police to consider the possibility that Brittany attempted to reach John's house, a mile away, by walking through the woods on the night she disappeared. It was nighttime when Brittany went missing, making it likely that she got lost in the dark woods along the route she had taken. In order to find her, the police launched a search in the woods near her home. However, being in the woods at night is scary and dangerous, and the question of why a young girl would not be afraid to walk through the woods in the dark is puzzling. The search in the woods lasted for 3 days but yielded no results. Just when the investigation seemed to be stalled, the police received information from a woman who claimed to have been in a nearby park the night Brittany went missing. The woman said that she had been with her brother in the quiet, deserted park, with no cars in sight except one, a Chevrolet pickup truck with distinctive wheels that had driven past. The woman had noticed the car and even remembered its license plate number. After verifying the information, the police discovered that the car belonged to Anthony Geiger, 23. To determine if Anthony was involved in Brittany's disappearance, the police began to look into his past. Their findings revealed that Anthony was the ex-boyfriend of Bobby Joe, Brittany's older sister. According to Bobby Joe, they had broken up a month earlier due to Anthony's excessive jealousy, especially his excessive attention to Brittany. She began to suspect that Anthony, 23, had feelings for her younger sister Brittany, which eventually led her to end the relationship with him. Brittany's friends recalled that Anthony often looked at Brittany strangely and tried to flirt with her. During their last meeting at lunch, Anthony tried to flirt with Brittany again. This aroused the police's suspicions, so they brought Anthony in for questioning in connection with Brittany's disappearance. Anthony claimed that he was not in the area on the evening of July 11th until the following day, July 12th, after police had begun searching for Brittany. Although he admitted to being friends with Brittany and seeing her regularly at gatherings, he maintained that they were just friends and denied any attempts to flirt with her. Anthony claimed that he considered Brittany too young for him and only saw her as a friend. According to Anthony, he was at home with his new girlfriend on the evening of July 11th. His girlfriend confirmed his alibi, but because his home was close to Brittany's, police still considered him a suspect. Police returned to examine a letter Brittany had written to John and noticed disturbing signs that she was saying goodbye to her lover, raising concerns that she may have been planning to harm herself after breaking up with her boyfriend. Brittany's parents, however, disagreed with this theory, describing their daughter as intelligent and determined. They believed that Brittany's passion for life and ambitious plans were unlikely to be derailed by a breakup. As the investigation stalled, police turned to the media to gather information from witnesses and enlisted the help of nearby police departments. Brittany's parents also joined the search effort, as they grew increasingly frustrated with waiting and doing nothing. They decided to take action by canvassing the neighborhood, going door to door and asking locals about Brittany. The police returned to the starting point of the investigation, Brittany's home. It was puzzling that she had left her phone behind, especially since she had planned to meet her boyfriend. This led to new questions. Was she kidnapped from her own home? If so, was the perpetrator someone she knew and trusted? During a thorough search of the house, the police found something important in Brittany's room, namely her diary, which contained a handwritten letter. The police considered the contents of the letter to be extremely important because it revealed the truth about Brittany's family relationships, which had been shrouded in secrecy. In the letter, Brittany described her life in detail. She wrote about her friendships, boyfriends, schoolwork, and her difficulties with her family. Specifically, she wrote that she came from a dysfunctional family, that she visited her brother in prison every Sunday, that her mother was a drug addict and abandoned her when she was 9 years old, and that she now lived with her father, with whom she was not very close, and his various girlfriends. Despite acknowledging her own shortcomings and past mistakes, Brittany expressed her determination to break free from the cycle of dysfunctional family life. Her goal was to become a forensic scientist and make a positive impact by helping solve crimes. After reading the letter, the police investigation shifted its focus to Brittany's family, who were not initially considered suspects. Police began investigating each family member and discovered that a male massage parlor, which was actually a front for prostitution, was being operated from their home by Lori Peterson, a friend of Brittany's father. Neighbors knew that Lori did not provide legitimate massages but only intimate services for money, which she openly advertised by handing out business cards in the area. Neighbors also reported that suspicious people often gathered at Brittany's father's home to use illegal drugs. Several men, most of whom Lori did not know, came to use her services. It is possible that one of her clients abducted Brittany from her home. After Brittany went missing, more than 100 police officers were tasked with identifying everyone who had visited Joe Dunn's home over the past month. A week after Brittany went missing, on July 18th, police made a breakthrough when they arrested a suspect in connection with the murder. However, at the time of the arrest, Brittany's body had not been found, making the news extremely difficult for her family to accept, as they still held out hope that she was still alive. When police released a photo of the suspect, Brittany's mother, Deborah, recognized the man as 38-year-old Jack Fuller, a family friend of 20 years. Jack regularly attended family gatherings and had developed a close relationship with the family over time, to the point where his daughter was engaged to Brittany's brother, who is currently in custody. Her mother Deborah was shocked by the news, finding it hard to believe that Jack could be involved in such a crime. The fact that his children were friends with Brittany made the allegations even harder to accept, and the family continued to hold out hope that Brittany was still alive. Jack had a lengthy criminal history, with numerous incidents and arrests over the years. His crimes included breaking into vehicles, homes, and sheds, as well as using and selling drugs. He was known to be aggressive, once threatening someone with a baseball bat and fighting with police during a scuffle. Jack also had a habit of lying to police about his identity, which he did after being arrested for driving under the influence. Court records show that he was arrested more than a dozen times over a 10-year period and had served time in state prison for theft and violating his parole. Neighbors said they feared Jack and often chose not to report his crimes because of threats. He was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison at his most recent trial, but was released about a year before Brittany went missing. Brittany's parents believed Jack might have stolen money or jewelry to buy drugs, but they did not believe he would harm their daughter. However, after Jack was arrested, police revealed how they were able to connect him to Brittany's disappearance. The key piece of evidence began with a phone call to the police station. The caller reported that Jack had confided in him a few days earlier about having back pain after burying a body in sandy soil. According to the caller, Jack was confident that the body's location would not be discovered and even asked for advice on how deep to bury it to avoid being smelled by animals. The police invited the informant to the police station and asked him to wear a wiretap to meet Jack Fuller and talk to him about the crimes, including the murder. The informant agreed and wore a wiretap to the meeting. During the conversation, Jack confessed to the murder, saying that he had buried the victim's body in a remote location that would never be found. However, he did not mention the victim's name. In addition, Jack said that he needed to kill someone else who knew too much. Pointing to his friend Tommy, the police were sure that Tommy knew something important that could help solve the case, otherwise Jack would not want to eliminate him. The police took Tommy to the police station for questioning, but he initially refused to cooperate, claiming that he had no information about the case. However, the police knew he was not telling the truth. The police played Tommy a recorded conversation between Jack and another person, in which Jack revealed his desire to harm Tommy because he was likely to reveal information. Realizing that his safety was in danger, Tommy decided to work with the police. He explained that on the night Brittany went missing, he and Jack had been driving around the neighborhood smoking marijuana. They stopped in front of Brittany's house, and Jack decided to go in to talk to Brittany's father about some issues. When he entered, Jack discovered that Brittany was the only person there. 5 minutes after Jack left, he returned to the car with Brittany, who was sitting in the back seat. Tommy said he was confused by her sudden appearance and asked what was going on, but Brittany remained silent, avoiding eye contact. Jack only said that he would drive Tommy home. When they arrived at Tommy's house, Brittany got out of the back seat and moved into the front passenger seat after Tommy got out of the car. Jack then drove away with Brittany. The next day, Jack did not mention the events of the previous day when he met Tommy again. That day, Jack took his car to the car wash, where he washed it thoroughly inside and out. This behavior was unusual for Jack, as he had never done this before. The car wash attendant even joked about washing the car thoroughly, but Jack reacted aggressively, warning the attendant to mind his own business or he would be in danger. Tommy discovered that Brittany was missing and immediately suspected Jack of being involved. He directly asked Jack what happened to her, but Jack's response was aggressive and evasive. Jack claimed to have taken Brittany home, but his attitude was threatening, warning Tommy to ignore it or he would be in trouble. The police found Jack's behavior suspicious and decided to arrest him. Upon arrival, they found Jack holding a can of gasoline, apparently preparing to set the car on fire to destroy potential evidence. During the search, blood was found in the car, and forensics determined that it was Brittany's blood. After the police found out that Jack had visited a car wash after a trip with Brittany, they went there and confiscated the vacuum cleaner he was using. A major discovery was made when criminologists found blood-stained sand inside a vacuum cleaner, and subsequent testing confirmed that the blood was Brittany's. However, despite this incriminating evidence, Jack refused to confess to Brittany's abduction and murder. He also refused to discuss the matter further. The police interviewed all of Jack's acquaintances. Most of them believed that Jack was capable of murder, describing him as a reckless man. Many described him as someone who would do anything. Although Jack did not work anywhere, he always had money. A major revelation came during the investigation. A patrol officer reported seeing Jack's car parked on the side of the road near the woods on the night Brittany disappeared. At the time, police were unaware of Brittany's disappearance and approached Jack, who claimed he was looking for his dog that had run off into the woods. With this information, the search for the body focused on the area where police had seen Jack's car. A comprehensive search effort was launched, involving officers, K-9 units, helicopters, and volunteers. Unfortunately, despite these efforts, the search was unsuccessful in locating Brittany's body. Police believed Brittany needed a ride to her boyfriend's house that night and asked Jack for help. Jack agreed, but instead of taking her to her destination, he dropped off his friend Tommy and took advantage of the situation to attack and kill Brittany. Police needed to find her body to build a case against Jack. While police were trying to get Jack to confess, a vital witness came forward. A woman who had previously been held hostage by Jack for months contacted police, claiming that she might know where he had hidden Brittany's body. The woman was a former drug addict and Jack had held her hostage for months before she escaped. She had learned of Jack's habits during her captivity and knew his usual haunts. She remembered him showing her a location near power lines, which he claimed would be the perfect place to dump the body without being detected. Initially, police were skeptical of the woman's claims but began questioning her. She provided detailed information about the location, including its location in Lakewood and the condition of the soil. This information caught the attention of police, as it matched an earlier tip from an informant who reported that Jack had complained about the difficulty of burying a body in sandy soil. Police conducted a search in the area identified by the woman, about 3 miles from Brittany's residence. The search effort, involving more than 100 people each day, continued for several days despite initially being fruitless. However, a major breakthrough came when experts compared sand found in Jack's vacuum cleaner at the car wash with soil in the search area, confirming a perfect match. The discovery fueled police's determination to continue searching the densely wooded area on the border of Monmouth and Ocean counties. On the morning of Tuesday, July 27, 2004, 15 days after Brittany was reported missing, she was found by 3 New Jersey K-9 officers who had brought their dogs along on a weekend search to help. Brittany's body was found in a ditch, and a collar with Brittany's name on it was found around her neck. Police knew right away that they had finally found her. The medical examiner confirmed the body's identity as Brittany Gregory through an autopsy. However, due to significant decomposition and multiple injuries, including strangulation and severe head trauma, the medical examiner was unable to determine a sole cause of death. A prosecutor clarified that head trauma was not the primary cause of death. Brittany's body showed no obvious signs of sexual assault, but the medical examiner did not rule out rape. Jack eventually accepted the plea deal after discussing the option with his attorney, a decision that was also supported by Brittany's family, who wanted to avoid a lengthy and grueling trial. Brittany's mother explained that her primary motivation for the deal was not to seek the death penalty for Jack, as she believed that would be too easy an outcome for him. Instead, she wanted Jack to spend the rest of his life in prison, reflecting on his actions and suffering the consequences of his actions. According to Jack, the chain of events that led to the incident began when Brittany asked him to drive her to her boyfriend's house, which Jack agreed to. After dropping off his companion, Tommy, Jack was going to take Brittany to her destination. However, he stopped on the side of the road and started smoking marijuana, which angered Brittany. She screamed and slapped him on the hand. This provoked a violent reaction from Jack, who began punching Brittany. Jack confessed to punching Brittany in the face and head at least twice because she tried to interfere with his marijuana smoking. After the attack, Brittany began gasping for air and making gurgling noises while Jack continued to get high as blood poured from her nose and mouth. When he finally turned to her, Brittany had stopped breathing. He realized she was dead and decided to dispose of her body. However, Jack's testimony was not credible because the medical examiner found signs of strangulation that Jack did not mention. Additionally, he did not explain why he removed all of Brittany's clothes. The prosecution believed the crime was sexually motivated, and a jury indicted Jack on February 9, 2005, for murder. Jack Fuller pleaded guilty on October 18, 2005, to intentionally causing serious injury resulting in death. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison without parole on January 13. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Teresa Halbach. Teresa was born on March 22, 1980, in a family of 5 siblings. Her parents, Richard and Karen, raised her on their family dairy farm. Tragically, her father passed away when she was 8. Later, Karen married Richard's brother, Thomas, and they raised their blended family together. Teresa loved the outdoors and dreamed of becoming a photojournalist for National Geographic. Her friends commented that she had a special ability to make people feel welcome. She is a very studious person and graduated summa cum laude with a degree in photography from the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. After graduation, Teresa continued working with Pierce Photography, where she had interned during college. She started her own business, Photography by Teresa, operating out of the Pierce studio. Teresa traveled widely and took freelance jobs with Auto Trader magazine, photographing vehicles for sale to supplement her income. Unfortunately, this job led to her untimely death. All the evidence pointed to one person, Stephen Avery. Stephen contacted Teresa to arrange a photo shoot of his sister's minivan. Records show she was last seen at 2:30 p.m. that day, a fact confirmed by Stephen's nephew, Bobby, who reported seeing the car enter the salvage yard. Stephen was first charged with a weapons violation, as he was a convicted felon. On November 11, 2005, he was charged with Teresa's murder, kidnapping, sexual assault, and mutilation of a corpse. Stephen's blood was found in Teresa's SUV, and her car keys were discovered in his room. Throughout, Stephen claimed he was innocent and that the police were framing him. At the time, he was involved in a $36 million civil lawsuit against Manitowoc County. Stephen Avery, born on July 9, 1962, is from Manitowoc County, Wisconsin. He grew up with his two brothers, Charles and Earl, and his sister Barbara, raised by their parents, Dolores and Alan. He dropped out of high school, and it was reported that he had an IQ of 70. He had several run-ins with the law. In 1981, Stephen spent 10 months in jail for burglarizing a bar. The following year, he was convicted of animal cruelty for pouring gasoline on his pet cat and throwing it into a bonfire, for which he served an additional 9 months. In 1985, he threatened his cousin, Sharon Morris, by chasing her out onto the street and pointing a gun at her, allegedly because he wanted her to stop spreading rumors about him. Sharon filed a report accusing him of repeatedly leaving naked and waiting in the front yard. Although he received a 6-year sentence for this crime, but then he was granted bail. Next was a case of mistaken identity, causing him to suffer an unjust prison sentence of nearly 20 years. On July 29, 1985, Penny Bernson reported that she was attacked and assaulted while walking on the beach near Two Rivers. The police thought the description of suspect she provided closely matched Stephen. He was then arrested and charged with the attack on Penny. A state-appointed forensic official testified that a hair found on Stephen's shirt was consistent with that of Penny. This evidence led to his conviction in December 1985, despite 16 witness statements and a time-stamped receipt proving his whereabouts at the time of the attack. Stephen was convicted of rape and attempted murder and was sentenced to 32 years in prison. He maintained his innocence and appealed in 1987 and 1996, but both appeals were denied by the higher courts. In 2001, Stephen contacted the Wisconsin Innocence Project, which took on his case. In 2002, DNA evidence proved his innocence, and Stephen was exonerated. It was later discovered that the suspect in Penny's attack was Gregory Allen, and he confessed in 1995. Gregory and Stephen looked very similar, and although Gregory committed a similar crime in the same area and was under police surveillance, but he was not considered a suspect. Gregory was not even included in the lineup of suspects. After spending 18 years in prison, Stephen was freed on September 11, 2003. He then filed a $36 million civil lawsuit against former Sheriff Thomas Kukurek and former District Attorney Dennis Bogle. His freedom, however, would not last long. When Teresa was reported missing, searches were conducted at the junkyard, the last place where she had been seen, as confirmed by Stephen's nephew, Bobby Dassey. Stephen claimed that he had spoken to Teresa when she came to take pictures, and then she left. In addition to the bone fragments, the SUV keys, and the blood found in a car, a bullet with Teresa's DNA was discovered in the garage. While in jail, Stephen's younger nephew, Brendan Dassey, was also questioned about the murder. Brendan, who was 16 years old at the time, was questioned by police without his parents or lawyer accompany. He confessed to investigators that first he and Stephen assaulted Teresa and then murdered her. They burned her body to destroy the evidence. Brendan was charged in March 2006 as an accessory to the murder. He later recanted his confession, claiming he was coerced by detectives. Brendan was charged with the same crimes as Stephen, even though there was no physical evidence linking him to the crime scene. Stephen was convicted in March 2007 and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Later that year, Brendan was also found guilty and given a life sentence, with the possibility of parole in 2048. This murder case did not have a clear solution and caused much controversy after the conviction. A petition urging the White House to pardon Stephen and Brendan collected over 128,000 signatures but ultimately had no effect. The White House clarified that, since the convictions occurred in a state court, the president lacks the authority to issue pardons. Many people, including Stephen and Brendan's families, believe in their innocence and hope the real killer of Teresa will be found. Stephen's ex-fiancée, Sandy Greenman, also believed that he is innocent. She started a Facebook page to raise awareness about the case, describing him as a model man. She expressed frustration that people wrongly portray Stephen as perpetually violent, but which is not true. Most notable, however, is the support of Kim Kardashian. As a socialite, she used her position to help case get a fair trial. After learning about the case through social media, she became interested. Despite her attempts to appeal to the governor, also has no effect. However, she remains determined to seek justice for both Stephen and Brendan. On the other hand, some people believe that Stephen is the suspect, including Jody Stachowski, another ex-fiancée of his. Initially, Jody supported Stephen's innocence. Later, she confessed that she lied and it was all an act. In an interview with Nancy Grace, Jody claimed that Stephen had threatened to kill her, her family, and a friend. She alleged that he wanted revenge on women after he was wrongfully convicted in Penny's case. She stated that Stephen was the one person she couldn't trust and that he was a monster. To avoid a conflict of interest, Manitowoc County handed over the case to neighboring Calumet County. However, as part of the agreement, Calumet County was allowed to utilize Manitowoc County's resources, including personnel. A Manitowoc County Sheriff's deputy found a key in Stephen's room after multiple searches. The defense team alleged that the blood evidence discovered in the car was actually taken from a vial containing Stephen's blood from a prior conviction. They claimed that the blood vial had been tampered with, citing a visible puncture hole on the stopper. However, the prosecution disputed this claim by testing the blood for a preservative typically found in stored blood samples, but not in fresh human blood. The test results showed no presence of the preservative. Stephen's defense team presented an expert witness who testified that a negative test result for the preservative did not mean it was absent, as the testing technology itself might be inconclusive. Brendan Dassey, who was 16 years old at the time, he was interviewed without a lawyer or parent present. Notably, Brendan had an IQ of 73, indicating intellectual disability, which may have made him more vulnerable to suggestion during questioning. Police used the Reid technique, a method that has been criticized as coercive, raising concerns about the reliability of Brendan's testimony. The Reid technique has faced criticism for leading to a high number of false confessions, particularly among juveniles and individuals with mental impairments. This method aims to make suspects feel comfortable with their interrogators, ultimately encouraging them to confess. During the interrogation process, suspects are presented with evidence that proves their guilt. In Brendan's case, he initially agreed with the interrogators but later retracted his confession. He claimed that his initial defense team worked with the prosecution to coerce a confession from him, which he later denied. Stephen and Brendan have repeatedly appealed their convictions, but have been denied each time and remain in prison. Their defense teams have made extensive efforts to secure retrials, but so far have been unsuccessful. However, Brendan is now being represented by Professors Laura Nyroder and Stephen Drizzen from the Northwestern University Center on Wrongful Convictions of Youth. Despite encountering numerous obstacles, they continue to pursue appeals on his behalf. Stephen Avery's decision to hire Kathleen Zellner as his lawyer has greatly affected his case. It has raised concerns about the accuracy of the prosecution's claims. His previous lawyers, Dean Strang and Jerry Buting, have leveraged their newfound fame to promote the case and raise awareness about Stephen. Kathleen Zellner, a highly accomplished trial lawyer, has successfully overturned 19 wrongful convictions. Her meticulous approach and relentless pursuit of justice resulted in the discovery of crucial missing evidence, helping to exonerate her client. Kathleen quickly got to work after being appointed to Stephen's defense team, and she believes in her client's innocence. One of the first things she wanted to clear up was the confession of Joseph Evans Jr., a Wisconsin inmate serving a life sentence for killing his wife. He claimed that he was also behind Teresa's death and trying to frame Stephen. However, Kathleen rejected Joseph's claim, viewing it as a blatant attempt to gain attention. Joseph had previously sought attention by writing a lengthy letter to the media, said that he had overheard Stephen confessing to the crime. This time, Joseph was probably motivated by the prospect of getting some bonus money, which he could use to improve his life in prison. As a result, his claim is not being considered credible. In August 2016, Kathleen filed a motion requesting new scientific testing, offering to pay for it herself. Her goal was to gather evidence to prove that Stephen was wrongly accused. The testing aimed to analyze 3 separate burn pits, which allegedly contained human remains. A notable discovery was a human pelvic bone fragment, which had been previously given to the family Teresa as part of her remains. Kathleen argued that this bone was planted in Stephen's burn pit. However, the defense team was not allowed to test the bone, as it was not disclosed to them, which Kathleen considered a Brady violation. This meant that potentially exonerating evidence was not properly disclosed. Kathleen remains dogged in her pursuit of justice. She approaches the case from a different angle, one that may help point to a new suspect in the case. Since the bone fragments couldn't be tested, she decided to conduct forensic testing on the Dassey family computer. What she found was disgusting. The computer contained pornographic, depicts women in various stages of torture, including violent images and videos showing women as victims. These images were reportedly accessed when Bobby Dassey was at home. Kathleen also discovered that Bobby's family members, including his mother Barbara, Stephen's sister, and her husband Scott Tadich, were allegedly attempting to destroy evidence that could incriminate Bobby. The forensic team successfully extracted 2,449 pages of data from the computer, including all of Bobby's searches, videos, and photos, which were saved to a CD-ROM and submitted as part of the motion for a retrial. Bobby is Brendan's older brother and Stephen's nephew. He played a crucial role as the prosecution's key eyewitness in Stephen's trial. According to Bobby, he last saw Teresa heading to his uncle's house, but when he returned from hunting that afternoon, both Teresa and her car were gone. Additionally, Bobby's half-brother, Brad Dassey, has made some claims that have added to the complexity of the case. Brad believes that Stephen is innocent. Furthermore, he has stated that his stepmother, Barbara, and Scott, Stephen's brother-in-law, deleted all the pornographic material from the computer. It is also reported that Barbara has filed a harassment lawsuit against Brad following a conversation they had about recovering deleted files from a computer. Some people think that this lawsuit is partly intended to keep Brad quiet about what he knows. A crucial piece of evidence may ultimately seal Bobby's fate. At the same time, it can exonerate Stephen and Brendan. An eyewitness named Thomas Sowinski has come forward with a sworn statement claiming he saw Bobby, accompanied by an older man, pushing Teresa's SUV into the salvage yard. Thomas was driving by while delivering newspapers and passed by the pair twice. The second time, Bobby allegedly stepped in front of Thomas's car, forcing him to swerve to avoid a collision. Thomas continued on his delivery route, but noticed Bobby seemed unhappy to see him. After the SUV was discovered, Thomas realized the importance of what he had seen and contacted the police. However, when he shared his account, police dismissed him, said they knew who the suspect was, and he never heard from them again. For Kathleen, this presents a clear contradiction to the prosecution's main witness. If proven, which she is confident will happen, Bobby's testimony would be discredited. Kathleen argues that the exclusion of crucial evidence supporting Stephen's case denied him a fair opportunity to prove his innocence years ago. A newly filed appeal is currently under review by the court, with a decision expected in November 2022. Stephen Avery maintains his innocence. Kathleen emphasizes that she represents those wrongly convicted and warns that she will discover any deception. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Jennifer Schuett. Jennifer Schuett was an 8-year-old girl who had just finished school for the day. She lived with her single mother, Elaine, who worked hard to ensure that her daughter was happy and well taken care of. Elaine juggled multiple jobs to support their family and give Jennifer a joyful childhood. With all the love and attention she received, Jennifer grew into a bright and cheerful child, showing a strong enthusiasm for learning and a natural curiosity at such a young age. Jennifer mentioned that children often fear the dark, and she was no different. She admitted that she was afraid of the dark and often slept in the same room as her mother. She recalled that from what she could remember about her childhood, she just didn't like the dark or sleeping alone, and so she felt comforted by going to bed with her mom. She stated that it was just the two of them, and they relied on each other. That night, on August 9, 2009, Jennifer and her mother, Elaine, shared a room. Jennifer was restless, tossing and turning and occasionally kicking her mom, which made it hard for Elaine to fall asleep. At 2:30 a.m., Elaine woke up and asked Jennifer to return to her own room since she had to get up early for work. In response, Jennifer said, "Mom, I love you, so I'm going to sleep in my own room tonight," and went back to her room. Elaine would later deeply regret this decision, but at that moment, she had no way of knowing what would happen next. The next morning, Elaine found that Jennifer was missing when she went to wake her up. She saw that the window facing the parking lot was wide open. Elaine quickly called 911. When the police arrived, she explained that she hadn't heard any sounds or screams after Jennifer went to her room. It's important to note that their apartment was on the first floor, and Jennifer's windows overlooked the parking lot. This made Elaine worry that someone might have seen Jennifer and entered her room through the window. Elaine understood that their apartment wasn't the best place for her and her young daughter, but it was all they could afford at that time. However, Elaine's parents stepped in to assist her and their granddaughter by buying a small house nearby and renovating it. Jennifer and her mother were set to move into the new house in a few months. The day before Jennifer went missing, they had been working in the garden there, where Jennifer had been bitten by mosquitoes, making it difficult for her to sleep peacefully that night. After her daughter went missing, Elaine was heartbroken. She expressed that Jennifer was her only child and begged for her safe return. The police dedicated themselves to finding her. Fortunately, Elaine received news sooner than expected. Later that day, around 6:30 p.m., the police got a call from parents whose children were playing in a field and discovered something alarming. To their shock, they realized it was a young girl. When the police arrived at the scene, they found 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett's body in the middle of the field, 5 kilometers from her home. Jennifer was in a serious condition, but she was still breathing. She had a deep cut across her throat. The most life-threatening injury was this wound, which led to significant blood loss and left her very pale and weak. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, where doctors worked hard to save her life. One doctor recalled that when he first saw Jennifer in the emergency room, she was a fairly small 8-year-old, very pale, and covered with ant bites and scratches on her back. He mentioned that she couldn't make any sounds because of the injury to her neck. Fortunately, he added that after the operation, Jennifer's condition stabilized and the bleeding stopped. He stated that they had completed her surgery, her airway was stable, and she wasn't bleeding, so they were very hopeful about her survival. When she regained consciousness after the surgery, her behavior underwent a sudden change. It turned out that she was afraid of all men. She later recounted that she had been kind of a hard patient to deal with because she had a lot of male doctors, and she was scared of males. Additionally, the Dickinson Police Department deployed a whole team to guard her hospital room. Throughout this time, Jennifer was in a constant state of panic. She even hit a doctor in the stomach when he tried to approach her. Elaine tried to comfort her daughter by explaining that everyone present was there to help her. Despite this, Jennifer remained distrustful of those around her. Her behavior became clearer when she disclosed what had happened to her that night. An investigator noted that they knew they had a survivor who couldn't speak and that the challenge was getting information from her. After all, she was only 8 years old, so it was tough. Because Jennifer was too scared to speak directly to the investigator, the detectives provided her with a notebook and pens. They asked her to write down her answers to their questions. Jennifer communicated through notes to her mother, who then relayed the note to the officer. Surprisingly, her written responses were very detailed and accurately described the events. Despite her young age, Jennifer demonstrated impressive intelligence. According to the note, that night, Jennifer entered her room, turned on the light, and picked up a book to read, hoping it would make her sleepy. It worked, and she soon fell asleep. Suddenly, she woke up to find the stranger carrying her out of the house. She said that he was running with her down the sidewalk and that she tried to scream, but he covered her nose and mouth. Afterward, he put her in a car and identified himself as an undercover police officer. Immediately, Jennifer felt that something was off, as she noticed her mother's car in the parking lot, which left her puzzled about their destination. While she understood that police are generally trusted, her mother had always warned her not to trust strangers. Jennifer recalled that as a child, she had wanted to believe the stranger, but the lessons she had learned about strangers in school, along with her fear of the dark, told her that something was seriously wrong. When they passed her grandparents' house, Jennifer suggested that he could drop her off there, but he replied that he couldn't because they were not home. At that moment, she realized that he was lying since their car was parked in the driveway. The man had stopped near Jennifer's school, which was about 3 kilometers from her house. He had told her to watch the moon closely and said that when it changed color, her mother would arrive to pick her up. Jennifer recalled waiting anxiously for her mother's headlights, but they never appeared. At that moment, she sensed that the man was mentally preparing himself for his true intentions. After 5 minutes, the stranger remarked that her mom wasn't coming, so they needed to go farther. He then drove a few more blocks to a dead-end street and stopped the car. Jennifer once again sought confirmation that he was a genuine policeman. She mentioned that she was questioning him and needed him to prove he was an officer. She asked him where his gun and badge were. He responded that his gun was in the back seat of the car. As Jennifer turned to look for it, the suspicious officer removed her underwear. Jennifer lost track of time while in the stranger's grip because she passed out. She only became aware of her surroundings again when he was pulling her by her ankles through the field. Despite the intense pain caused by twigs and stones pressing into her back, she acted as if she were dead and remained silent, knowing that this was her opportunity to survive. He eventually released her feet and left her alone in the field. Jennifer heard him walking away, followed by the sound of his car door slamming and the engine starting as he drove off. She realized that she couldn't scream and didn't understand why. She managed to place her right hand on her neck and felt a deep wound. Looking at her hand, she saw it covered in blood. Since the exact time of her disappearance was unknown, it was thought that she lay in the field for 12 to 14 hours. As the sun set, she noticed the lights of passing cars nearby. She heard children's voices and a dog that approached her several times, seemingly trying to get its owner's attention, but the owner never came. During this time, she was bitten by fire ants, which helped her stay awake. Jennifer stated that every time she regained consciousness, she was shocked that she was still alive. She said she wasn't afraid and had accepted that she might not survive. Suddenly, she heard children's voices nearby, and then something hit her leg. When Jennifer next regained consciousness, she heard a police officer saying, "You've been found. You're going to be okay. Just please stay with me." She remembered being loaded into the life flight helicopter. This experience was very difficult for young Jennifer because she couldn't speak and had to communicate by writing everything down. Her fear of men added to the tension, so her mother asked the questions, and Jennifer's responses were passed on to the officers outside the door. Remarkably, 8-year-old Jennifer was able to get the stranger's name. "I just remember recalling his name, so I wrote that he said his name was Dennis. I remember thinking he looked greasy and that he might have had a scar or something on his face." For days after Jennifer went missing, the police enlisted the help of forensic expert Lois Gibson. She communicated with Jennifer using gestures and notes. Despite these difficulties, they created a detailed composite sketch of a man, which was released to the public in hopes of receiving information. While this was happening, police searched the crime scene and discovered Jennifer's clothing about half a mile away, along with a man's shirt and underwear. Unfortunately, DNA testing on the clothing did not yield any matches to a suspect. Jennifer's recovery took time, but she demonstrated incredible strength for someone her age. There was a particularly tough moment when she became upset over a chocolate bar she couldn't eat, screamed in frustration, and made a faint sound. Doctors were surprised because her vocal cords had been nearly severed, and they didn't expect them to heal, yet they started to recover. Soon after, Jennifer was released from the hospital. She returned home and resumed her studies. After finishing school and college, she chose to become a children's librarian. However, she never forgot the traumatic events of that night. Every day felt like a search for her attacker. She wondered if he could be anyone around her. Could it be our new neighbor? Someone at the post office or the grocery store? Is he watching us? Will he come back to finish what he started? Fortunately, Jennifer met a man named Jonathan, and for the first time in years, she felt she could trust someone. They fell in love. Meanwhile, the investigation into her attacker stalled. The chances of finding him diminished as time passed, and the case remained unresolved, moving from one investigator to another without progress. 18 years after that dreadful night, Jennifer received a phone call. She learned that Detective Tim Cromie would be taking over her case and that he wanted to meet with her. Tim Cromie promised to do everything possible to catch the criminal, and Jennifer believed him. He told her that he would do whatever he could in his power until the end of his career to get her the answers she needed for the case. Tim decided to involve FBI Special Agent Richard Renison in the case. Richard had previously worked for the Dickinson, Texas Police Department before joining the FBI. Together, Tim and Richard uncovered a significant amount of evidence collected on the day Jennifer went missing and shortly after she was found. Key pieces of evidence included Jennifer's underwear, as well as the perpetrator's shirt and underwear. They sent a DNA sample found on these items to the lab in Quantico, Virginia. While detectives recognized that DNA analysis technology had improved significantly over the past 19 years, they also knew that the age of the case would make it less of a priority in the lab. Investigating cold cases often comes with the challenge of time, as witnesses forget, people move away, and some may even pass away. However, One advantage of this case's age was the advancements in DNA technology that could aid their investigation. A year later, their efforts were finally recognized. The man whose DNA was discovered at the crime scene was Dennis Earl Bradford, the same name that Jennifer had identified years earlier. Remarkably, the 8-year-old girl had been extremely precise in her descriptions. Despite being on pain medication, unable to speak, and only 8 years old, she wrote down the name Dennis. This was a significant indication of her accuracy. In fact, it later became clear just how precise she was about many details. Dennis Bradford, now 39, lived in North Little Rock, Arkansas, and his DNA had been entered into the national database after he assaulted a woman in a bar in 1996. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison but only served 4. On February 4, 2000, he was conditionally released, and less than a year later, he was arrested for driving under the influence, just half a mile from his home. He remarried and worked as a welder until his arrest in 2009. Tim Cromie and Richard Renison looked into the connection between a suspect from North Little Rock, Arkansas, and Dickinson, Texas, a small town. They discovered that the man had been arrested in Dickinson in 1987, 3 years before Jennifer's attack. At that time, he had 2 addresses located within 2 miles of Jennifer and Elaine's apartment. To verify that he was the kidnapper, detectives requested a 19-year-old photo from his driver's license. When they saw the photo, they were shocked because it resembled the composite sketch made with input from 8-year-old Jennifer. One detective asked if Dennis had ever heard the name Jennifer Schuett, to which he replied affirmatively. The detective then inquired if Dennis had ever had the occasion to come into contact with her, and the suspect again confirmed this. When asked to elaborate, Dennis hesitated, stating that it was a lot to explain, but he believed that if the detective were to see her, he would be extremely proud of her. Finally, and the suspect stated that Jennifer was alive, repeating that she was alive. The detective reacted with disbelief, exclaiming, "Oh God." The suspect responded by saying that the detective had no idea how hard he had prayed for that, mentioning that he was a believer in Christ but had no idea about her status. He added that it was just about 2 days later when he ran away and took off. Dennis Earl Bradford was arrested on October 19, 2009. He claimed he didn't know Jennifer, couldn't remember why he had stopped near her apartment, and didn't understand why he had acted so cruelly towards her. Bradford also shared a significant detail that investigators were unaware of. After the attack, he felt intense guilt. He wanted to pull the trigger but ultimately changed his mind. Following this, he was admitted to a psychiatric ward, which was the same hospital where Jennifer was still receiving treatment at that time. He had been very close to her at that time. Immediately after the interrogation, detectives informed Jennifer that the criminal they had been searching for 19 years had been arrested. Jennifer expressed that when they called her that morning and told her that they had really arrested Dennis Bradford, it was the most moment of her life and meant everything to her. She conveyed her gratitude to the detectives for fulfilling their promise and, above all, wanted to thank Detective Tim Cromie from the Dickinson Police Department and Special Agent Richard Renison from the FBI for all their hard work and dedication over the last year and a half. She emphasized that their promise from day one, never giving up on her case and hearing her voice while seeing her determination, meant a lot to her. Jennifer also admitted her anticipation of facing Dennis Bradford in the courtroom since he was willing to plead guilty and not drag out the trial. Jennifer was given the opportunity to select the court date and chose August 10, the 20th anniversary of the attack. She mentioned that she remembered staying up late, endless nights, trying to perfect her victim impact statement, writing, erasing, and writing again, just trying to perfect what she wanted to say. She said that she had 19 years worth of things to say to that person. However, it was not meant to happen. On May 10, 2010, a few months before the trial, Dennis hung in his jail cell, which made her feel that her right to see the case through to the end had been taken away. Jennifer went to Dennis's grave and read aloud what she wanted to say in court, stating that Dennis Bradford had chosen the wrong little 8-year-old girl to try and murder because for 19 years, she had thought of him every single day and had helped in searching for him. She expressed that in her heart, she knew he was out there, and now she realized that by listening to her heart all those years and never giving up on finding him, she had been right. After finishing her speech, Jennifer turned to her husband and wondered if Dennis had hurt her. At that moment, a fiery ant bit her leg, and she took it as a sign from God that he had heard her loud and clear. Jennifer reflected on her experiences, mentioning that despite the horrific events caused by Dennis's actions, she faced yet another challenge in her life. She explained that as a result of the trauma, she almost lost the ability to conceive a child. However, she noted that amidst the darkness, there were shining examples of kindness, particularly from Dr. Craig Witz, who, after hearing her story, generously offered his services to her twice, free of charge. She shared that at the end of 2012, she and her partner welcomed their daughter Jenna and later their son Jonah, expressing her disbelief by saying that it felt like a dream and questioning who would have thought that they would really be her happy ending. The criminal tried to silence her and take away her right to be a mother, but he failed. Jennifer desires for her story to be shared, not for her own sake, but for others who have endured similar ordeals and must cope with them every day. She mentioned that they have gone through something in life that they can talk about, and she believes it is worth sharing it with others to instill hope. She expressed her hope that this would inspire others to use their voice to help someone else. Jennifer also added that, in the end, she is not a victim but instead victorious. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Chad Amelia. Chad Amelia was born in 1992 in Santa Clara, California, USA. His parents, of Irish descent, married young and then moved to the United States. They were eager to pursue the American dream, a common goal for millions. When they arrived in the United States, they found themselves isolated in a foreign country, with no one nearby to support them. Communication with relatives was only possible by phone. Despite the distance, the couple and their children remained determined and did not return to Ireland. Chad grew up with his younger brother Shane. They got along and supported each other from a young age. Following the example of their parents, difficulties shaped their characters, making them kind and fair. Both boys were always ready to help others in need. Chad, the eldest, was especially hardworking. He played baseball and football in high school, and when a coach noticed his talent, he was given a spot on the school team. This opportunity fueled his passion for sports, and he became a talented football player. After graduating from high school, he attended California State University, Chicago, graduating in 2018. Soon after, he joined Camarilla, an accounting firm. At the same time, he continued his studies in economics to improve his accounting skills. Known for being sociable and kind, Chad easily connects with people. One spring day in 2018, 20-year-old Chad was walking his dog in the park when he unexpectedly met Bryn Spetcher, a smart, friendly, and determined 27-year-old girl. Like Chad, Bryn is from Chicago, Illinois. She moved to Washington when she was older, making some changes to pursue her education and find a good job. Bryn was born with hearing problems and was nearly deaf from a young age, forcing her to wear a hearing aid. This made her feel out of place in the educational environment, leading to various challenges. However, it also fueled her desire to help others, as she tried to maintain a positive attitude. Despite the difficulties of moving to California, Bryn earned a degree in audiology, a significant accomplishment that she had long pursued. Her career was just beginning, and she quickly secured a position as an audiologist at a hospital in Los Angeles. She wanted to help others who, like her, faced hearing challenges. Bryn lived in California for about a year but was not sociable and often took time off from work, so she did not have a wide circle of acquaintances, communicating only with a few friends with whom she could spend weekends. Chad changed her life dramatically. They started talking and quickly realized that they had many common interests. Chad was very fond of his smart and attractive girlfriend. He often talked about her to his friends, and he expressed his happiness. She seemed pleased too, eager to share stories about him with her friends. They seemed like the perfect couple, visiting each other often. On May 27, 2018, Bryn went to her boyfriend's house, bringing along her beloved service dog, a husky guide dog. Her boyfriend, Chad, also had a dog, and the two animals got along well. The following weekend, about a month later, Bryn was planning a business trip to another city, so she wanted to spend some time relaxing with her Chad before the trip. And Chad lived in the Tarzana Oaks area of California. That evening, one of Chad's neighbors, a guy named Vinny, returned home around 2 a.m. He spent about half an hour with Chad and Bryn, who were watching their favorite TV series. Vinny then went to sleep in his room, while another neighbor slept, using earplugs and sleeping pills. That night, Bryn and Chad decided to smoke marijuana. In California, marijuana use is legal, having been legalized in 1996. Chad took a few breaths and quickly relaxed. Bryn at first, she didn't feel anything, so she tried again. This time, she felt terrible. Her mind went blank, her vision blurred, and she had trouble breathing. She told her boyfriend, who went into the kitchen to get her some water. She felt so bad that she feared for her life and asked Chad to stay with her. Chad, who had used before, didn't have the same problems and was calm enough to support her. Bryn admits that she thought she was going to die. She began hallucinating about dying in pain and felt like she wouldn't survive the night. She was angry at her boyfriend because he seemed fine and suspected that he was setting her up. In her hallucinations, he became the bad guy who orchestrated her death through drug use. She also heard voices in her head urging her to kill him, and Bryn realized that the only way she could survive was to get rid of her boyfriend. Suddenly, she stood up and went into the kitchen, where she picked up a large knife. Bryn returned to the living room, where Chad was still lying on the couch. She stabbed him multiple times in the chest. At that moment, she heard voices urging her to continue stabbing. She couldn't resist them because she felt out of control. Bryn experienced a fierce cruelty and aggression she had never felt before. The hallucinations continued, and with each stab, she felt relief. Meanwhile, the neighbors were in other rooms on the second floor. One was fast asleep and didn't hear anything. The second neighbor, Vinny, heard some rustling from downstairs, but there was no loud noise or screaming, so he didn't think much of it. Vinny assumed the couple was watching TV. After a while, he heard Chad's voice asking Bryn to leave him alone and call for help. The voice got louder and more frightening, which scared Vinny. To find out what was going on, he started going down from the first floor. When he walked in, the first thing he noticed was the frightened dogs. When he entered the room, he saw the furniture scattered everywhere. In the living room, Bryn had a knife in her hand, covered in blood. Chad lay there, wheezing, his eyes wide with horror as he looked at Vinny. Chad's hand was slashed by her, defenseless, but Bryn, in her frenzy, stabbed him with a kitchen knife. A large gash across his chest that Bryn continued to attack with a look of fury on her face. Vinny yelled at her to stop, but instead, Bryn turned to look at him with a blank expression. She was still holding the knife. Feeling the danger, Vinny quickly went upstairs and knocked on the second neighbor's door to warn him. However, the neighbor was fast asleep and did not respond. So Vinny grabbed his cell phone and ran downstairs. Fearing for his life, he ran out onto the street and quickly called 911. Once outside, Vinny used his phone to call emergency services. His screams attracted the attention of the neighbors, who ran out to see what was going on, making Vinny feel safer. He started banging on the windows and shouting for the girl to stop. The neighbors, seeing the situation inside the house, also started shouting. Everyone was scared and shocked. Meanwhile, inside the apartment, Bryn continued to attack Chad, not paying attention to the commotion outside. Within minutes, the police met Vinny, who was sobbing about the events that were happening. He could only point to the apartment where the violent attack was taking place. The police rushed into the house to intervene. In the living room, they found Bryn repeatedly stabbing a young man in the chest. The room was covered in blood, and although the young man showed no signs of life, Bryn did not stop. The police considered using force to end the attack. However, when ordered to drop the knife, Bryn began stabbing herself in the neck. The police quickly used a stun gun, but it was ineffective. Bryn continued to harm herself, so the police used a baton to disarm her. It took 9 blows to knock the knife out of her hand, even breaking her arm in several places, but she seemed completely unaware of the injuries. Only then did Bryn drop the knife. In addition to stabbing Chad, she also stabbed her dog several times. When other rescue services arrived, everyone was shocked by the horrific scene, which looked like a bloodbath. Doctors tried to resuscitate Vinny, but he was in shock and could not remember or explain what had happened in the house. The experience had a profound effect on him, and he needed a long recovery period with the help of psychologists. The dog was treated at a veterinary clinic and eventually recovered from his injuries. Unfortunately, by the time the police arrived, Chad was dead. There was a lot of blood from the stab wound, and witnesses to the incident were present. These witnesses were neighbors who had come out of the house when they heard screams. They described what they saw to the police, but could not understand how such a brutal attack could have happened or what had provoked it. Chad had 108 stab wounds, most of them concentrated around the heart and neck. Some of the wounds were superficial and not life-threatening, while others penetrated vital organs. It is difficult to determine which specific wound caused Chad's death. He also had multiple self-defense wounds. Bryn after self-inflicted wounds to her neck. She was rushed to the hospital, where she was placed on a ventilator and intubated. When police tried to communicate with her, they used only a piece of paper and a pen, as she was unable to fully respond because of the life support equipment. Once she was stabilized in the hospital, she was able to communicate fully. Various tests showed traces of mild substances in her blood. Doctors noted that the levels were very low and did not pose a threat to her life or mental health. It is unusual for such a small amount to cause such an extreme reaction. However, doctors did not rule out the possibility that her blood levels had dropped. When Bryn spoke to the police, she claimed that she did not remember anything that had happened. As a result, she did not know where Chad was or what had happened to him. She believed that her injuries may have been caused by an assault with the intent to rape her. In addition to the neck injury, she also suffered a broken neck and a bludgeoned arm, which was how the police safely disarmed her of the knife. However, she did not remember the event either. Bryn could not believe the police account of how she attacked and stabbed her boyfriend. Despite this, she did not seem to feel remorse for her actions toward Chad. Bryn refused to comment further and immediately requested a lawyer, as she considered herself innocent and blamed the incident on the effects of drugs. The last thing she remembered was being discharged from the hospital after 4 days, on May 31st, when she was immediately arrested for Chad's murder. Eventually, she was able to share a more detailed account of the events of that tragic night. Bryn recounted her story. She had gone to visit her boyfriend with a dog and they watched TV together. Around 10:30 p.m., when Chad stepped outside to smoke, she joined him, saying she wanted to try it too. She then began to feel unwell, hallucinating and hearing voices in her head. Bryn had difficulty breathing, felt disoriented and nauseous. She then had a hallucination blaming Chad for her condition. The hallucination urged her to kill Chad, claiming it was the only way to stop her bad feelings. Although she initially resisted, the hallucinations grew stronger. Feeling like she was going to die, Bryn attacked Chad with a knife but insisted that she had no control at the time, claiming she was innocent. When the police arrived, the hallucinations told her to harm herself. She complied with these voices. Bryn insisted that she could not resist because the voices in her head had complete control over her. She could not even drop the knife when the police asked her to, until they broke her arm. Bryn believed that she was suffering from drug-induced psychosis at the time. She was eventually charged with first-degree murder, but she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Preliminary hearings took place and her bail was set at $500,000, which she paid, allowing her to await trial at home. During this time, the police continued to investigate and Bryn's attorney repeatedly requested adjournments. And Chad's murder trial was set for October 23, 2023, but a new district attorney took office a month earlier, causing further delays. The trial finally began on November 9, 2023. The new prosecutor reduced her charges to manslaughter, which shocked the victim's family. They could not understand how someone could accidentally stab the victim more than 100 times. Remarkably, all of this took so long that Chad's mother did not live to see the trial and never saw justice. She passed away in 2020. The court psychiatrist concluded that Bryn suffered from a psychotic disorder caused by smoking. This decision was supported by other experts, and according to the prosecution, they did not have enough evidence to refute this conclusion. During the trial, Chad's family insisted that it was a deliberate massacre and demanded punishment. The defense argued that Bryn's behavior showed signs of psychosis. She was not aware of her actions, first stabbing her boyfriend and then hitting him multiple times. A police officer using a stun gun was unable to stop her, and they were only able to take the knife away after breaking her arm with 9 blows from her baton. This behavior showed that she was psychotic. However, according to Bryn, she understood what was happening. She remembered everything and claimed that she saw the murder as the only way to survive. She was aware of her actions and made her own decisions, despite experiencing hallucinations. Her arguments were strongly opposed by her attorneys. As a result, the defense continued to delay the trial, which lasted for 5 years. The main issues in dispute were whether there was intent to kill Chad and whether Bryn used the drug voluntarily. Under California law, a person can be held responsible for such crimes while under the influence of drugs or alcohol if it can be proven that the use was voluntary. If the drug was coerced, the killing is considered unintentional. This must be proven. The prosecution pointed to numerous letters from the girl, in which Bryn repeatedly told friends that she had been drinking. She also mentioned smoking occasionally, suggesting that this was not her first time using. The prosecution argued that on the day Chad was killed, she also used the drug voluntarily, as she had done before. Many colleagues defended Bryn, describing her as a very responsible person. She had no criminal record and no one could testify that she was capable of causing such a psychotic episode. However, this claim seems dubious, given her medical history, which should have made her aware of the potential consequences. She defended herself by saying that she was unsure what drugs her boyfriend had smoked and given her that night and believed he had given them to her intentionally. No other drugs were found in his home. Bryn's parents defended her, claiming that she had no romantic relationship with Chad and that she was acting in self-defense against harassment. They attempted to portray her as a heroine. However, friends on both sides disagreed, saying that Chad and Bryn had been together for nearly 2 months, had an intimate relationship, and that everyone knew about it. Chad's relatives denied any allegations of violence against him. They described him as respectful of women and noted that although he had a smoking habit, which his parents had advised him to quit, it was legal and had never caused any problems. They insisted he was not aggressive, so they did not believe he would attack his girlfriend. Throughout the trial, Bryn showed no remorse for what had happened. The only time she cried was when the brutal details of her arrest were described. She could recall the intense pain of being beaten with a baton. The case was complex, controversial, and attracted considerable public attention. Many were puzzled as to how a seemingly kind-hearted girl, dedicated to helping others, could commit a brutal murder. The jury then deliberated on the verdict. The jury then found Bryn Spejcher, 32, guilty of manslaughter. Bryn showed emotion for the second time during the trial. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. At that point, she was focused only on her sentence. She did not care that she had caused serious harm to her loved one. Bryn simply did not want to take responsibility for her actions. Chad's father spoke to reporters, expressing his frustration with the justice system's decision, which he considered unfair. He also pointed to inconsistencies in Bryn's testimony. She contradicted herself. For example, she initially described her boyfriend as a nice young man who was easy to talk to. However, when the subject of smoking was brought up, Bryn admitted that she had always been afraid of him and then began to deny that they had a relationship. Chad's father said that Bryn did not want to take responsibility for her terrible actions and tried to blame Chad for the bloody massacre to reduce her sentence. The father could not believe that the court would seriously consider that a person could accidentally inflict more than 100 wounds on another person. His son's death was not simple or painless. Chad had suffered a lot, and now the killer was trying to blame him with lies. During the trial, the prosecution argued that Bryn smoked of her own free will, and Chad had never forced her to take drugs when she did not like them. However, psychiatric experts confirmed that Bryn's psychosis was caused by the drug. This was one of the first cases where a voluntary user was justified in using drugs. And while awaiting the verdict, the girl was released on bail. On January 24, 2024, Bryn Spejcher was sentenced to 2 years of probation in order to complete 100 hours of community service. The judge justified the lenient sentence by stating that Bryn was not in control of his actions during a psychotic episode, making a reduced sentence appropriate. The attorney applauded the court's decision, calling it the right thing to do. However, Chad's father was unhappy with the ruling, arguing that the judge had set a dangerous precedent. He said the decision implied that marijuana users in California were being given a license to kill. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ana Ramirez. Amanda and Ana Ramirez, born on January 8, 1992, in Camden, New Jersey, USA, are identical twins, arriving just minutes apart. From a young age, they were incredibly close, often wearing similar clothes and choosing the same toys. Their relationship was characterized by understanding and genuine emotional, with conflicts between them being rare. Although they were born in the USA, they come from a family that emigrated from Puerto Rico, a large family with the dream of achieving the American dream. Despite facing challenges, their family's unity and love helped them overcome difficulties. Amanda and Ana were seeking a better life in the USA. When they grew up, their family gave birth to another daughter. Of course, Amanda and Ana stood them out because of their identical appearance. From a young age, their parents emphasized the special bond they had since their time in the womb. They slept in the same crib during their first months, which contributed to their close relationship. As they grew older, Amanda and Ana did everything together and acted as a team. They were very close and always stayed by each other's side. Their mother encouraged this bond, hoping Amanda and Ana would always support each other. And indeed, they did. Amanda and Anna took their first steps together, holding hands to keep from falling. The two girls, who grew stronger together, they were inseparable during kindergarten, elementary, and high school. Their bond stayed strong into adulthood, and it seemed like nothing could break this pure sisterly union, which grew stronger each year. Gradually, carefree childhood ended, and adulthood began. Anna had better relationships with man. She was the first of the twins to get married and become a mother. She was described as a loving and dedicated mother who did everything for her kids. At that time, Anna had completed courses and received certification in a field of activity related to helping people. This accentuates her friendly and positive personality. Colleagues and friends admired Anna's kindness, describes her as a friendly and humble beauty. When Anna became a mother, she had to balance her career with her family responsibilities, striving to create a bright future for her daughter. Later, she had 2 more children. Anna still maintains regular contact with her family, especially her beloved twin sister, Amanda. She often comes home to visit her grandparents, mother, brothers, and sisters. Anna and Amanda still keep in regular contact, they exchanging messages and phone calls to share their daily experiences. When Anna had a daughter, Amanda was eager to know all about her niece and frequently inquired about her. Amanda helped Anna a lot, supporting her in taking care of her children and learning the fundamentals of motherhood. Amanda also aspired to have her own family and become a mother, so she paid close attention to every piece of advice Anna offered. Amanda was kind and caring, always ready to assist. Amanda regularly spent time with Anna and her children. During the first few years of her life, Anna's eldest daughter spent a lot of time with both her mother and with her aunt, Amanda. This allowed the aunt, Amanda, to bond with her niece and gain valuable childcare experience. These skills and knowledge later proved useful to her. At that time, Anna was very busy, and it was with Amanda's help that she was able to manage daily tasks. Whenever they had free time, the sisters often spent time together, went for walks, and relaxed on weekends. Anna and Amanda loved parties and could go dancing all night long. In those moments, they were with their close friends. They were always friendly and cheerful. However, the story of the two sisters had a sad ending. Life showed that even the closest and most sincere connections can be broken in a cruel and heartless way, and the circumstances are so strange that it's almost impossible to tell the truth from the lies. In 2019, Anna and her twin sister Amanda were both 27 years old. Anna had 3 children, while Amanda had just given birth to her first child. During this time, Amanda was experiencing a difficult period in her life. She struggled with emotional problems after giving birth. She was diagnosed with postpartum depression, and her family around to support her. To help her sister Amanda through this difficult time, Anna often tried to bring some joy into her life. Amanda frequently met with Anna to have a drink and discuss the difficulty of motherhood, which both sisters understood well. On the evening of June 22nd, the sisters planned to attend a party with close friends. After the party, they intended to visit their cousin before heading home. That evening, Anna and Amanda gathered at home to choose their outfits and do their makeup. At the party, they had a great time, laughing and enjoying themselves. The next morning, Anna and Amanda posted a photo together on Anna's social media page and captioned it that they were having fun. Nobody anticipated that this cheerful post would be the last one where both twins would be alive. Just a few hours later, the police received a call from a distressed girl who said she had found her sister on the street. The caller is Amanda, and she urgently requested the officers to hurry. Amanda reported that Anna had been shot in the chest but didn't know who the shooter was. She noticed a deep cut on the right side of the chest. Anna was lying on the street right in front of their cousin's house, where they had spent most of the evening drinking and taking selfies. Amanda mentioned that they had visited a brother whom they had not seen for a long time, and it seems a conflict erupted there. Around 5:30, Anna was injured and collapsed on the sidewalk. After receiving the call, the medics quickly arrived at the scene. They found Anna lying on the asphalt in a pool of her own blood, while Amanda was not nearby. Anna had lost a large amount of blood, putting her life at risk, so urgent action was required. The police also responded and reached the scene after the ambulance. Anna was on the ground, seriously injured, bleeding, but still alive, with a deep wound in her chest. The medics promptly placed her in the ambulance and administered first aid during the ride. The police hoped Anna could identify her attacker, but she lost consciousness in the ambulance due to severe blood loss and was immediately taken to a medical center. On the way to the hospital, doctors tried to keep Anna alive. However, less than an hour later, at 6:20, the medical center staff pronounced her dead, unable to save her. This news was a devastating shock for her family. Suddenly, overnight, Anna, a mother of 3 children, was gone because of a violent act. The motive behind this senseless act was completely unclear. Anna was kind-hearted, empathetic, and had no legal issues or criminal history. Was she the victim of a random or intentional crime, and should the investigation focus on those around her to find the killer? The investigators quickly noticed that Anna's belongings, such as her money and mobile phone, were left untouched, suggesting she was not robbed. The violent nature of the incident indicated it was personal. Police began questioning neighbors, but they confirmed that Amanda's account of Anna arguing with her cousin was untrue. Several witnesses reported hearing only Anna and Amanda arguing loudly, with no men's voices present. This went on for a considerable time, until the argument stopped and the medics arrived. The police detectives came to Amanda's apartment to gather information. She had called the emergency number and was able to provide valuable information and an explanation of the argument. Amanda confirmed that she had argued with Anna that night, but she went home after the argument ended. Then something unexpected happened. Someone attacked Anna, but Amanda didn't see the attack. When she returned, she found Anna bleeding. When it was reported that Anna had died, Amanda showed no emotion. This might have been due to nervousness or exhaustion, but it caught the police's attention. Even though Amanda received the news of Anna's death with an odd calm, it was something else that caught the police's attention. What really intrigued the detectives were the bloodstains on Amanda's clothes. Additionally, her face had visible scratches and there was dried blood on her head. Her hands were covered in injuries typical of defensive actions, like cuts, suggesting she might have tried to take a knife from someone. The police also found several bloody footprints that went Anna's body on the street to the building's door, up the stairs, and reached the apartment where Amanda and Anna spent the night. At first, when investigators requested to enter the apartment, Amanda was hesitant to let them in because she was frightened and tried to persuade the officers that her injuries were accidental. However, the situation was too suspicious to accept her explanation. Ultimately, Amanda allowed the police to enter without requiring a warrant. At the apartment, they also discovered traces of blood. In the kitchen, they found a large carving knife in the sink, covered in dried blood. Detectives saw this as clear evidence implicating Amanda in Anna's death. She was promptly arrested and brought to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, Amanda provided investigators with 3 different accounts of how Anna might have died. In the first account, Amanda claimed she had no idea what happened to Anna, stating that she found Anna already injured on the street. Amanda didn't notice any suspicious people or vehicles, leaving her completely baffled by the incident. Amanda thought that Anna would not have an enemy capable of such harm, so she speculated that her cousin might be involved. She recalled that Anna was conscious at the time but had lost a big amount of blood and was disoriented. Amanda got blood on herself while trying to help Anna and went into shock before entering the apartment, which seemed unconvincing. Additionally, Amanda didn't mention defensive wounds from a sharp object, and the bloody knife found in the kitchen was puzzling. Upon realizing that the police thought her story was a lie, Amanda attempted to revise her story. It's important to note that Amanda was very intoxicated, making it challenging for detectives to follow her narrative. Her testimony was confused and contradictory. Despite this, she offered a revised version of the incident that evening. They were at their cousin's house drinking. As morning approached, Anna drank too much and felt unwell, so she decided to order a taxi. When the car arrived, she said goodbye and left, but no one confirmed that she got into the car. After which Amanda decided to head home. On her way, she discovered Anna injured on the street. Anna had a severe chest wound and was bleeding heavily, but she couldn't explain what had happened. Amanda quickly called an ambulance and notified the police. The detectives attempted to reach the cousin who owned the apartment to verify Amanda's story. However, at the time, this was never done. Realizing her difficult position, Amanda desperately offered a third version of events. She confessed that while they were drinking, a fight broke out between she and Anna. Under the influence of alcohol, Anna lost control and punched she in the face. Although Amanda was momentarily disoriented, but she quickly regained her senses. She recalled feeling furious after Anna hit her, but then she experienced a memory lapse. Amanda intended to enter the apartment to cool down, but moments later, she found herself standing on the street in front of Anna, person who is bleeding. According to Amanda, she doesn't remember what happened during this time. The latest and most credible version of events is that during this time, she went into the apartment and took a kitchen knife. The conflict had subsided by then, although no one witnessed the incident, but all evidence suggests that Anna was killed. When Amanda saw Anna in that state, she went back to the apartment to grab a cell phone and call emergency services. During this time, she tossed a knife into the kitchen sink. She contacted the medics but stayed in the apartment, overwhelmed by shock. Sadly, Anna's injury was too severe, and she passed away. This tragedy deeply affected the Shi family. The news about the incident became a main topic in the media, especially within their local community. Many interviews were conducted, and most people found it hard to believe that such a tragedy could occur between them. Anna and Amanda's sisters were known to be so close, to the point that few can remember any petty quarrel between them. During this time, Amanda was arrested and sent to the county correctional center to await her murder trial. Her lawyer claimed the crime was accidental and argued that Amanda should be released on bail and placed under house arrest to care for her newborn daughter. However, the judge denied this request because of the crime's severity. Amanda was denied bail as she was deemed too dangerous for society. Concerns were raised about her emotional state, so psychiatrists frequently evaluated her. They found no mental disorders, deeming her sane and fit to stand trial. During this time, investigators thoroughly verified all the information provided. It was confirmed that Anna and Amanda did indeed spend time with cousin, who was eventually located and able to testify as a key witness. Although some neighbors heard arguments and the sounds of a struggle, no one witnessed the actual attack. Amanda continued to claim that she could not remember what happened. Cousin confirmed that a quarrel occurred between Anna and Amanda that night, but it ended, and he did not see any attack between them. The cousin stated that then Anna and Amanda had calmed down, and everything seemed normal. He never expected that Anna and Amanda, who had been so close since childhood, to be involved in something as unthinkable as a stabbing. The cousin confirmed that before things settled down, Anna and Amanda did get into a fight. This might explain the scratches on Amanda's hands and face, as well as more serious defensive wounds, deep cuts on her hands, suggesting they fought by a knife. However, the cousin did not know the reason for the sisters' fight. In September 2019, Amanda gave the investigators her final account of events to the best of her memory. She recalled having a fight with Anna while they were at their cousin's apartment, but claimed she was too drunk to remember the cause of the conflict. Amanda explained that at one point, she lost of awareness, and when she regained awareness, she found herself standing over Anna, holding a bloody knife. She noticed the bleeding was severe and worried that she might have been responsible. Feeling overwhelmed, Amanda said she left Anna in the street and fled. She confessed that she would never have acted this way if not for being intoxicated. Amanda, a young mother, recognized there was no excuse for her actions and expressed deep regret, but she stressed that the murder was accidental. The prosecution was certain that Amanda was not being entirely honest and that the attack was intentional. They believed that an argument led to Anna's death. Detectives suspected that Amanda had a motive, thinking she had held a long-standing grudge against Anna. In the end, her intoxication turned this anger into aggression. The investigators were trying to confirm if the act was premeditated. The police suspect that a man, who both sisters were attracted to, was involved in the incident, as he seemed to be the most likely cause of the conflict between them. Amanda explained this, because she didn't want her loved ones to know that the death of Anna was due to such a trivial reason. This thing were confirmed by an anonymous source. One day, a man who wished to remain unnamed called the police station. He claimed that jealousy was the motive behind the cruel act against Anna. Anna's aunt also confirmed this thing. She shared the story with both the media and the police. According to her, the conflict arose because of Anna's husband. It was revealed that Amanda had secretly been in love with him for a long time. She envied Anna, and even used her resemblance to Anna to have sexual relations with him. When Anna discovered this, she was furious and accused Amanda of betrayal. The aunt mentioned that Amanda had often bragged that neither Anna nor her husband had any idea about the deception. This seemed especially horrific in light of the murder, giving the police strong reasons to suspect a premeditated act driven by jealousy. Even so, Amanda's family provided her with strong support. Her mother attended every hearing and was moved every time. Her mother realized that one daughter was already lost forever, and Amanda faced the possibility of spending her life in prison, which filled her with sorrow. Other relatives were also consistently present at the hearings, repeatedly pleading with the judge for leniency. They highlighted that Amanda had recently given birth, and her child risked growing up without a caring mother. In addition, the family also opposes the theory that the motive for the attack was a love triangle. Except for an aunt who gave conflicting testimony about affairs, no one had heard such rumors about Amanda's personal life. Everyone saw how warm and close the relationship between Anna and Amanda was. Even during the last party, they seemed very friendly. It was unlikely that they would have maintained such a close connection after the betrayal. Amanda's younger sister, named Monica, who was 19 at the time of the trial, claimed that Anna and Amanda had a very strong bond. She was sure there couldn't be any love triangles in their lives. Both sisters were decent and wouldn't get involved in something like that. Monica said that Anna had been in a long-term relationship with a man named Luis Rivera, who was also her husband. During that time, Amanda also had a boyfriend, with whom she had a child, and they were planning to get married. Therefore, there was no reason for Amanda to date Anna's boyfriend secretly. Monica added that Amanda called her as soon as the tragic incident happened. Amanda cried a lot during the phone call, insisting she did not remember anything. Monica believed that, in her current state, Amanda would be honest and confess if she were guilty. Consequently, she dismissed the prosecutor's suggestion that Amanda was involved with Anna's husband. Anna's husband also denied having any affair with Amanda's, stating that he could easily differentiate them and such deception was impossible. The prosecution continued to question Amanda, they trying to understand the motive behind the massacre, but they couldn't get any more information. Despite the murder, the entire Ramirez family and those connected to Amanda dismissed the idea of a love triangle as fiction. They were convinced that the case materials were fabricated by the police to treat the crime as a premeditated attack, which would mean imprisoning Amanda for a longer time. Anna's husband, Luis, firmly denied the aunt's statements. However, the prosecution continued with this theory, suggesting that Luis was unaware of being manipulated. The accusation of infidelity was central to the prosecution's strategy, which deeply enraged the entire Ramirez family. Amanda's lawyer mentioned that the incident might not be solely related to alcohol intoxication that night. Anna and Amanda drank a lot, but the aggression was due to postpartum depression. Amanda faced emotional issues after her pregnancy and struggled to manage them. Her lawyer explained that her mental state, along with excessive alcohol consumption, triggered an episode of uncontrollable aggression. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough evidence to support this claim. A psychiatric evaluation revealed that Amanda was fully aware of her actions. The tears of the mother and the pleas of the sisters had a positive impact. In November 2019, Amanda reached a deal with the prosecution. This deal resolved the controversy surrounding her motive and spared her family the ordeal of a lengthy trial. In the end, Amanda received a sentence of only 6 years in prison. She will be eligible for parole after serving 5 years. During the sentencing hearing, Amanda was overcome with emotion, breaking down in tears and trembling. She acknowledged that her actions were inexcusable, expressing remorse to those present. For Amanda, the most severe punishment was the pain of loss she would feel for the rest of her life. Amanda asked for forgiveness. Although inconsolable, but the family said they held no grudges and considered the punishment fair. Furthermore, Amanda's mother and younger sister announced they would continue to support she and her children until her release. Anna's mother took responsibility and custody of Anna's children. All the children went to live with their grandmother.